We are live. We're live.
What the fuck?
Okay. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley.
What the hell? Okay. So for some reason, it is not playing. So I will read it to you guys. It is a Hawk Wars, Neoliberal Imperialist versus Kevin Castley, the last debate. It is a rather inconvenient time for the military interventionists on Twitter. A toxic civil war has all but divided certain elements of the Hawk community, causing much drama over the past couple of days. After about a week or so of feuding throughout all corners of the interwebs, Darth MMI, supreme leader of the evil neoliberal empire, has finally agreed to debate Mr. Kevin Castley of Superpower Broadcasting. With the final verdict resting in the hands of a mysterious shadow jury, libertarian-ish YouTuber The Politicrat, go subscribe to his channel, has agreed to moderate the debate, which will hopefully bring an end to this squabble once and for all. Anyway, okay. That did not go as well as I had hoped. I was hoping we'd be able to see the opening crawl, so that was a bit of a failure. I spent so much time writing that. That was time I could have been anyway. Anyway, so everybody, welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I am your host, the Politicrat, of course. I do not agree with either of them on foreign policy, which is actually why I was pretty much chosen for this debate, because in a sense I'm the most neutral in a way. But either way, so tonight we will be having a very formal debate. All right, and the resolution is fuck the working class. For the resolution, we have MMI, and against the resolution, we have Mr. Kevin Castley. How are you guys doing this evening?
I'm hyped. Let's get to the debate.
All right, so the format of the debate is going to be opening statements. Each of you will have 5 minutes to make an opening statement, after which one of you will end up doing the questioning, or cross-questioning the other, and then you'll switch. The other will cross-question the other one after that. After that, you will each get 20 minutes to argue your main point, followed by another 5 minutes each of a rebut period, followed by 5 minutes for a closing statement. So that will put the debate itself at about 80 minutes. So yeah, I mean, and if anybody needs, I don't know if I don't know where we're gonna be able to fit an intermission, but if you really, really, really need it, I suppose we could do it after the first person makes their argument. But again, that's only if you guys really feel like you need to, like you have to get some tea or take a piss or something. But yeah, anyway, how are you gentlemen doing this evening? This has been a week in the making.
Yeah, a bit longer than that, probably altogether, everything considered. But yeah.
Anyway, So what we are going to do is a coin toss to decide who will end up starting with their opening statements. We're going to flip this coin. So heads, MMI wins. Tails, Kevin Castley loses. No, I'm kidding. No. Okay. So what do you want, heads or tails? Since McCarthyist is the guest, you get to choose whether you want for
heads.
Heads. So that leaves you with tails. So we will flip the coin. Tails. So, Mr. Kevin Castley, I will give you 5 minutes to. Well, let me set my timer. So I will give you 5 minutes to make your opening statement. After which, once the timer goes off, I'm going to have to cut you off. I kind of wish I was able to be in control of the stream, but I guess it doesn't work like that. So either way, yes. Tell me whenever you're ready, and you could start by opposing the resolution, aka "fuck the working class."
Yeah. Before we go to this, just a point. Every moderator will put like a -30, -20 seconds in the private chat so that the person making their statement knows how much time they have remaining. If you could do that, I'd appreciate that for both of us. So, because I've got my private chat open, so I can see alerts on that. So, okay, wonderful.
All right, so tell me when you're ready, and I can press start.
Let's get this show on the road.
All right, you have 5 minutes starting now.
Okay. Well, thanks for moderating, Politicrat. Here we are. I am, of course, faced here with McCarthyist, Machiavellian Imperialist, and device is not connected. We lost our moderator. I'm not sure why that happened. He'll need to reconnect his audio and everything. That's weird. So basically, as far as this is concerned, okay, he's back. He's back. We'll add him back. Okay, there he is. There he is. So your device is disconnected, Politicrat.
Oh no! I was trying to shut off my my. Never mind. Just go. Keep going.
Okay. So can we restart the clock?
Yes, we can restart.
That's I don't know what's going on. Like I think a lot of people are like, "What's going on?" So.
Okay. We will restart that. Okay. Actually, for real this time. 5 minutes starting now.
Okay. So tonight I'm facing McCarthyist, Machiavellian Imperialist. We're arguing, should we screw over the working class? Should we fuck over the working class? Obviously, my point around this is that when it comes to my worldview, when it comes to the hawk community as a whole, there are people out here that will say, oh, we need to have unity. We need to have unity. We can't divide. We can't infight. And I at this point consider the extent of this being infighting as much as fighting the Nazis was in World War II. In other words, not all hawks are aligned. And just as Stalin was hawkish, just as Hitler was hawkish, that doesn't mean that they're in the same community as Truman and Reagan and George W. Bush. In other words, we represent different agendas, different worldviews. We represent different, general agendas for the world. And so what we're talking about here is essentially the base of the economy. We're talking about the purpose of our country by and large. And in this case, we're talking about the American dream, which applies outside of the United States, of course, to all Western countries. The idea that we have a meritocracy, that we try to remove class barriers, that instead of having this antagonism between those who rule, those who lord over, and those who are seen as the workers, we instead have an opportunity in which people can rise to the tops regardless of where they started. And I posit to you this, that if we remove that, if we remove the American dream, then at that point, there would basically be no point in fighting for America. And there would be no point in America promoting her interests abroad. At that point, America would become indistinguishable from her rivals, from fascist Russia, from communist China. My opponent here tonight is going to argue to you that elitism is somehow this enlightened form of governance and whatnot. And yet, in practice, elitism is exactly what our enemies have. It's exactly what the Russians have. Our enemies, fascist Russia, has 3,000 families who control the entire economy. They plundered the fruits of the people's labor for 30 years, to the point that they're no better off today economically in real terms than they were under communism. That's what elitism provides for you. That's what it yields. It yields only the ultimate glorification and prestige upon the very few, essentially in the aristocracy. And so when we're talking about the United States and we're talking about the West, we don't want to live in an aristocracy. We don't want to live in a system in which essentially a coast or an aristocratic cabal essentially is pitted against and out against its own people. Why would the people even fight for that system, and why would that system even be worth spreading? We are in the midst of the worst pandemic in essentially a century, just over a century, and yet we have this talk of fuck the working class. That is completely disgraceful, and I think that it stands to reason tonight, my friends, that when we're talking about what we believe in and what we fight for and everything, we must have higher standards than simply just being hawkish. That if you're a hawk, but you don't actually care about the ideals and the principles and the values and the things that make our country great, and you hate the base of the economy, then at that point, you might as well just go and be a hawk for the Russians. I mean, if it's all just state interests, essentially. And so at this point, I'm going to essentially yield my time, because there's not really that much more that needs to be said here. The working class obviously should have the be afforded
minus 60 seconds
dignity. So with that, I yield my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Castley. So now we will move on to the opening statements of Machiavellian imperialist of the neoliberal empire, or whatever it is you call it. But anyway, so again, just like I gave Mr. Castley, I will give you 5 minutes to make your opening statement. Once we get down to 60 seconds, 30 seconds, and then 10 seconds, I'll give you that notification when that happens. But whenever you're ready, I will hit the start button.
I'm ready.
All right, we are starting now.
I am MNI. You may know my general worldview, albeit heavily strawman by Kevin Castley. I believe in strategic neoliberalism, first and foremost, which takes relative gains into consideration and would advise trading against recalcitrant / major powers such as China and Russia if they were to acquire marginally higher trade surplus given a bilateral transaction with the United States. Strategic neoliberalism, as I define it, would ardently support mutually beneficial trade agreements with U.S. allies and client states in order to socially optimize the economic output at home while strengthening our geopolitical allies. I would also point out that extreme protectionism, the likes in which Kevin Castley supports, is not functionally different or consequently different from being sanctioned by every country in the entire world. If he believes that raising the trade barriers to U.S. geopolitical backers is a good idea, then that is a contradiction to his pro-sanction arguments on China and Russia, which I'll get to later. I also believe in pragmatic elitism, the viewpoint that those with merits and academic credentials ought to dictate public policy as opposed to those who do not. Ceteris paribus. It assumes that all else is equal. The reason is that all else equal, control variables, which are qualities, personality, character, whether they are malfeasant, as you have pointed out, credentialed individuals are more able to make sound decisions that are well-informed, as opposed to uninformed individuals. The topic of whether those with credentials are malfeasant, as you pointed out in the other debate, compared to those who do not have credentials, is a separate point, which you will most likely bring up. However, I would make the case that is the opposite, but I am saying that is a completely separate discussion entirely. Thirdly, what I also support is utilitarian capitalism, which I would elaborate upon the idea in which pro-union regulations ought to be dismantled and be replaced with this redistributive welfare system. The central idea is to minimize total cost of production and marginal cost by deregulating unnecessary measures. There's the minimum wage and one-sided union bargaining, and improve social welfare through those deregulations, which would be done when both producers and consumers would surplus would increase with these policies, and would raise sound anti-deadweight loss taxes and redistribute those loss in utility for society that occurred through unemployment that may have been caused by outsourcing or workplace deregulation, which in turn maximizes societal utility. This I back with economic theory and empirical evidence, given that free trade, assuming no trade with China, Russia, or any country with negative relative gains, and decreasing marginal cost per production as much as possible, would maximize surplus for the society, which would in turn be redistributed in the form of welfareism. Lastly, I support an offensive realist foreign policy. One ought to acknowledge the reality that state actors are inherently rational and in general seek to maximize hegemony. In a foreign policy debate in which this is US-centric, we ought to promote a foreign policy that promotes the interests of the United States, assuming the positive assumption that other states would act rationally and all times maximize their hegemony. This would entail acknowledging that recalcitrant states, such as Russia and China, would not be open to détente policy with the United States due to inherent zero-sum relations. However, this would also mean not antagonizing third world countries or neutral countries and maximizing the number of foreign backers for the United States, because otherwise that would get in the way of American imperialism and the American hegemony all across the world. And those third world countries involved, ironically, Switzerland. However, I'll question and focus on Kevin Castley on his own worldview, upon which, after several interactions I've had, it's proven to be logically inconsistent and incoherent in certain cases. And I will prove this in the cross-examination and question session that follows the opening statement. And I yield my time here.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. So now we will end up moving on to cross-questioning, beginning with Mr. Castley to address the opening statements made by Imperialist, as well as any other concerns that you have with regard to his opposing the resolution.
So yeah, just to clarify, so this is essentially the point now where I'm going to be asking direct questions toward McCarthyist, essentially.
Correct.
Yes, but then McCarthyist is able to answer each one in turn, or does he have to wait until the end of the questions?
Honestly, whichever you would.
Well, I'd prefer to have a direct conversation.
Okay, direct conversation. So I will give you each, or I will give you 5 minutes to ask him. Let's go with 3 questions each.
Okay.
3 questions? Wait. That's a bit short. I think it should be more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you like me maybe to extend the
okay, Kevin Castley, what do you think
to 10 minutes?
Okay, Kevin Castley, what do you think the question limit should be? I believe that it should be more.
Well, I think it should be more as well. Like normally, if this was a typical debate on this channel, we kind of go as long as we needed to. But I get that we're trying to have, I guess, a more structured sort of debate.
So in that case, then I will do 10 minutes for each of you. Castley, you have 10 minutes to ask him any pertinent questions.
Okay. Okay.
And then
he gets 10 minutes.
Pardon?
And then he gets 10 minutes.
And he gets 10 minutes, correct.
Okay, wonderful. So the first one would be essentially.
Hold on. I need to set the timer. All right. 10 minutes starting now.
Okay. Wait, actually, there's a point brought up from the chat, which is that somebody's noting that MMI should go first because I went first for opening statements. Didn't you say that was how it was going to go?
That is not how it is. That is not how it goes.
Okay.
Just ignore it. Just go.
Okay. So the first one that I've got essentially is that you talk all this talk about outsourcing and all this kind of stuff and everything. My first question to you, McCarthyist, would essentially be: do you understand that if you outsource all of the manufacturing, the heavy manufacturing, all this sort of stuff to other countries, even if they're not enemy countries, such as, for example, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, that those countries are very likely to fall in the first weeks of a third world war, and then you've lost your manufacturing base. Now your enemy is able to produce all these tanks and everything to overrun you, and you don't have anything else. Would you prefer that in the event of World War III, which I believe is likely to occur later this century, would you prefer to have more factories at home that you're able to switch on to a wartime economy, or fewer? That's my question to you.
So here's my stance on this. Okay, so there are 2 angles that I can take on this. First of all is, well, I'll make this the second point. The first point is that about heavy manufacturing in general, that's a practice that was done by the Soviet Union as well. The Soviet Union in general has also done heavy manufacturing in Eastern Germany, Poland, and its client states all across its neighbors. And not only that, it's a common practice even by China as well. And whether that is rational policy or not, you might as well ask the technocrats there. However, with the United States in particular, I will say that if you are afraid that that these manufacturing factories are taken over and occupy World War III, which I can personally say it's unlikely, which is a separate point again. In order to prevent that, that's just simply an argument to increase military presence and to increase more U.S. commitment through defense agreements and other alternatives. And the second point is that that argument is centered around the assumption that World War III would happen. And not only that, there's actually two assumptions that you make with that question. The other assumption is that if World War III happens, the recalcitrant states would be the ones that would attack first. Because otherwise, if we're the ones that were to attack first, we would be the ones who would be occupying their territories, not the other way around. And by asking that question, you're assuming that not only World War III will break out, which again is the baffling assumption, you're also assuming that they will have the first advantage. They will have the advantage in the war in the beginning, which ironically contradicts your own statement, saying that, which you said previously, that the United States can take over the entire world by itself. So what is it? Is the U.S. weak?
The U.S. doesn't have the will to do that, though. The problem that you're forgetting is that for all
may I remind you, MMI, that you're just supposed to answer the questions that he asked, because you ended your statement with an additional question. So if you want to ask him anything specifically, we will wait till your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So basically, my point there is that it's a matter of will, and that America is never going to have really the will to do it first, even if
just ask me questions. Ask me questions.
Yeah. So then the second question that I have essentially is that a lot of people would levy the charge at you that this sense of elitism, that this sense of an elite, that you argued that it was based around credentialed academics, that it was about the qualifications and everything concerned there. Would you, McCarthyist, do you personally harbor any sort of animosity or hatred or bigotry towards those that are seen as not elite, the working classes or historically oppressed minorities, that sort of thing?
No.
Okay. So then that leads me into my next line, which is that it's come to light, and this was posted on Twitter recently by somebody who was present there, that you not only said the N-word towards a black veteran, but you also said that you would, quote, burn his jigaboo house down, and proceeded to call him a, quote, cotton-picking C-word, unquote, except you used the actual term. Again, a black veteran. How do you respond to that?
Okay, first of all, that is an ad hominem. You're supposed to debate the policy content of what I'm saying. And second of all, if I were to address that particular incident in particular, or that one particular incident, if you go on the political pigpen, you will see that Volt and I are cool. Literally, he has said that we're cool and he's okay with the whole thing. And when that happened, okay, there's no damage. All of it was resolved. And even Politicrat, ironically, said the N-word on there. So you can't really criticize it.
I didn't say it. The bot said it.
Yeah, and same with me as well. Because if you remember in the screenshot you took, it's $make. That's the bot saying it. So
yeah, but
again,
commanding the bot.
By the way, this is not a content debate, and Politicrat, you should be enforcing this rule. That's an ad hominem.
Excuse me, I'm just saying, okay. This is not an ad hominem. An ad hominem is saying like you're ugly. This is specifically about your regard.
Ad hominem's definition is instead of criticizing the content of an argument, you're criticizing the source of the argument.
Are you seriously arguing? Are you seriously arguing that this isn't relevant to your specific argument for elitism? That the degree to which
I'm going to interject here. This topic I deem irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's because you were involved, obviously. So that can lead. Well, that leads me to another line of reasoning. Then, if
no,
we're
it's
just
that doesn't have to do with. No, we're talking about. This is about the elitism.
We're talking about policy.
Yeah, content. This is about. We're talking about policy. We're not talking about. And also, we're not discussing.
Yeah, racism is relevant to policy. Whether or not one holds racist animosity is relevant to policy. Just because McCarthy has said that Volt is cool with it doesn't mean that didn't represent a hatred towards that group at large. To use cotton picking C word, for example, that goes beyond just one black person. You see what I'm saying?
Again, I have addressed this. Volt has addressed this, and I have pointed out you're not talking about the content. You're simply talking about the source of the content. That is the logical fallacy.
Well, okay, so let it stand for the record. You're not denying that the remarks were spoken. All that you're saying is essentially that it's been resolved with the particular person that you were directing them at. I would argue that those remarks are racially animus towards an entire group, but that's just me. I want to move on to the second point, which is in a pandemic, especially, to have this kind of rhetoric where you focus and say, we should oppress the working class. You and your account have gone and retweeted as well as posted yourself all kinds of remarks about screwing over and oppressing the working class. And yet now you try to say, oh, well, it's just about credentialed academics and having the most qualified person and everything in there. Yet you essentially, in your view, it's very obvious that you really do feel that these people are dirt, that you feel that retail workers especially are trash. And we also, it's also been brought to light, screenshots from conversations of you absolutely trashing retail workers. So how can you argue that this is simply about the most credentialed academics? It seems to me like this is coastal elitism saying you're better than the economic base of the country that you want to lord over. Why should anybody vote for your worldview?
Okay, like that. First of all, you said a lot of things besides question. You asked 2 questions. I'll answer
minus 1 minute.
First of all, you said that you asked whether how is that going to help me get elected. You realize this. I'm not here to get elected. I made this account, and by the way, this isn't even content. All right, I'm just answering this out of courtesy. I could, but anyways, if I'm answering it, this account is a burner. If I were to run for public office, it would be with my real name, with my face, and my contact information on it, not McCarthyist, Machiavellian imperialist. Okay.
Then if that's true,
and second of all,
then if that's true, why did your girlfriend have to come on here and almost break down in tears to defend you and your remarks on
minus 20 seconds
for 2.5 hours if it was all just a troll? Nobody buys that, McCarthyist. Everybody knows that that's what you actually feel. You're just there to vent.
Minus 10 seconds.
You're not asking a question, but second of all, I'll answer a question.
5,
she came on her own accord.
3, 2, 1, time. All right.
So, thank you, Mr. Castley, and thank you, MMI, for answering the questions. I got a little heated there for a second. But again, I'd like to remind everybody, just both of you, I'm not saying either of you are going to do it or either of you have necessarily been doing it, but refrain from, number one, of course, any kind of fallacious argumentation. Specifically stick to the topic that we're discussing, or at least anything that is relevant therein to it, somehow related to it. Also, do not make personal attacks against other people who are not involved here. And finally, like the one thing I'm going to say, at least for the sake of the formality, in the future, when referring to based waifu, refer to her as based waifu and not as MMI's girlfriend, because that makes it. I think that
her actual channel that she comments with is Head of Facts. I'll refer to her as that. So.
Oh, okay. I thought it was okay. Never mind. Then refer to her by her channel name. All right. So next we have MMI. You will also have another 10 minutes to cross-examine Kevin, and we can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. So, one question: if you could sanction any country, which would you sanction?
Well, currently, out of all the countries that are around right now, I would answer at this point. Essentially, would you consider first? Let me ask: would you consider a blockade a sanction?
Just name a few countries.
Fine, I would say Russia and China because they have too many nukes to.
Okay, Russia and China. Okay, why do you sanction them? And is it because it's bad for them economically? Is it to hurt them? Is it to hurt Russia and China? Is that why you want to sanction them? Yes or no?
It's in part yes.
Okay, so you want to hurt Russia and China, so you want to sanction them. Okay, so another question: Do you agree that multilateral sanctions are more effective than unilateral sanctions? I'm not asking you whether we can pursue multilateral sanctions or whether or not they deal more economic damage. I'm just asking you whether they deal more economic damage. Are multilateral sanctions more effective in crippling an economy than unilateral sanctions? Yes or no?
If that particular country is totally globalized and involved with a ton of different trading partners, then yes. If they're already autarkic like North Korea, then no.
Okay, so another question. What's the consequential and functional difference between a country that tariffs every country in the world and inevitably tariffed back by every country in the world and a country that is sanctioned by every country in the world? What's the difference? Consequential difference.
I'm not arguing to tariff every country in the world.
I'm not asking. You're not answering my question. I'm asking you, what is the difference between the two? What is the difference?
One is doing it of its own accord and preserving its sovereignty. The other is not prepared for it and being a victim of.
Okay, so the only difference between the two is that one is voluntary, it's self-inflicted, and the other is that they're forced by other countries. Okay, got it. So you have
that's not the only difference. You're missing the point about the preparedness, that there would be time doing it on your own terms to transition over to a domestic-based, not autarkic, but heavily domestic economy.
Okay. So you pretty much said, okay, basically preparedness. Okay, that's a weird argument, but okay. So next question. You have
that's
told
not
me
a weird argument. You don't argue that having warning time is relevant?
Hey, politicrat, moderate this.
Yes.
Moderate this if he tries to extend the time. Okay, so you have told me in the past that the United States would beat the entire world in a World War III. If you stand by this claim, do you think that on the outbreak of World War III, the United States would be able to quickly annex minor Russian allies, such as Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, etc.?
Currently, like right now? Right now?
No, just in general, like in terms of our military power. In terms of
raw numbers, it's possible, but there's never going to be the political will at this rate in Washington to do something like that. Because willpower is what matters. That's why Putin wins, even though Putin's way weaker.
Okay, so that's your question. So, but they do have the military power to annex them. Is that correct? If there's a World War III, and we decide to start it, we can quickly annex those minor allies. Is that correct? Yes or no? Just a yes or no.
The United States doesn't have the political will to start that.
I'm not asking political will. In terms of military power, solely. In terms of military power, do we have the ability to do so? Yes or no?
Yes, but so does Russia.
Okay, yes,
some of the neighboring countries.
Yes. Okay. You answered yes. Okay. Do you support free trade and outsourcing in countries such as South Korea and Japan? Yes or no?
No.
No justification. No. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. What do you think is the most economically isolated or the most protectionist country in the world?
Yeah, you're going with North Korea here. But
I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. You're going to say North Korea and try to compare what I'm advocating for to North Korea. They're not exactly protectionist. They try to trade with China.
No, I asked you what is the most economically isolated or the most protectionist.
Okay, most economically isolated would be North Korea, except they have a huge trading relationship with China.
North Korea. Okay, that's your answer. Okay. Another question: do you support incest marriage / breeding? This is sort of off topic, but just answer yes or no. Do you support incest marriage / breeding?
No,
yes.
and
what does this have to do? I'm sorry.
This is not relevant.
What does this have to do?
Far less relevant.
No, it is relevant.
What does this have to? How is this relevant?
Far less fucking relevant than
Kevin.
It is,
Mr. Castley. How does this pertain to the topic, MMI?
Okay, I'm asking this for own reasons. Okay, if he brings up a certain point, this will come up. But anyways, just answer yes or no. Do you support incest? Yes or no? I'm assuming no, right? I don't.
This is a hack job. This is not relevant. Obviously,
you're trying
to compare economic protectionism to incest.
This is not relevant.
I'm not talking about economics here. But anyways, okay. So
you're off topic.
You tweeted sanctioned Switzerland. Do you still abide by that claim? If so, why?
Yes, because they harbor North Koreans.
Okay, besides that, they harbor North Koreans. What else have they done?
They harbor terrorists. They trade with Iran. They simp Russia. They're neutral. In my view, neutrality in the face of evil is evil. And you will regard it essentially as part of the axis of evil. You're either with us or you're against us, to invoke that phrase from the Vanguard.
Okay, so one of your argument is that because they trade with Iran, Russia, China, they should be sanctioned. Is that correct?
And they're a neutral party, so they don't even have the pretense of being an ally.
Okay, so they're neutral and they trade with Russia, China, and okay, that is why you want to sanction them. Okay, okay. Last question: do you support Smoot-Hawley tariff that was imposed during the early 20th century?
Can you go over the specifics of that?
The Smoot-Hawley tariff, the tariff that was raised before World War One. Actually, before World War II. Whoops.
On which parties, or on which products?
The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act.
Okay.
The one that.
Which, okay, can you just describe it and what it tariffed?
So, do you not know what the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 is?
No, I'd need to go over it.
Okay, it was a protectionist trade policy in the United States that raised U.S. tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods, and it tariffed a lot of European countries, and it had a very protectionist element to it. Would you support this? Feel free to look it up during the debate, but
are you saying would I support this sort of policy right now, or would I support it back then in the 1930s?
We just supported it back then. Not right now.
Well, you want to build up your own manufacturing base so that when the war breaks out, you'll have more factories to turn online as opposed to in enemy territory or occupied territory. So to some extent, yes. I mean, you know that there's a big war coming up.
Yes. Actually. Okay, yes. Okay. You answered yes. Okay. I give my time.
I mean, I know what he's trying to do. The problem is we're talking about trade as if
this
trade.
This is the question session. It's up to me
okay,
how I will.
Mr. Castley, he yielded his time, so we are going to move on to the next part now. Before we do go on to the 20-minute presentation that each of you will give, hold on. So yeah, we're arguing your main points. Are you guys in need of 5-minute information, either to collect yourselves, go get a glass of water, go, I don't know, do anything like
I'm fine right now. We could go to an intermission at some point in the next maybe.
I'm just asking if you guys would like to do that now or if you guys are good to keep going.
We'll keep going. I can keep going.
Okay. All right. So next we have Mr. Castley. You have 20 minutes to argue your points. I am setting the timer now. I will let you know once we get to 10 minutes. I'll let you know. Once we get to 5 minutes, I'll let you know. Then 2, and then 1, and we'll go down from there. So.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll start by saying in full disclosure to the audience tonight, I wasn't aware of any sort of format that we were actually going to be doing with this debate. So bear in mind that as you judge my arguments going forward, I don't have any sort of prepared speech or anything here laid out. I was expecting this to be more of a free form debate. But, you know, Politicrat's moderating it. So, you know, it's his moderation style. That's what we're doing. So 20 minutes. Okay, fine. So what we're talking about, essentially, to get back to the initial sort of resolution, is this idea, well, screw the working class. In other words, this idea they don't know any better, this sort of thing. Some of the arguments that have been presented in that regard are things such as, well, they're anti-war, or they don't know the economics, or they don't know this, they don't know that. And here's the problem, and I've asked this to people in the past, which is that if we assumed a ceteris paribus and all else equal case, then yes, you could say that you might prefer somebody that has more qualifications over somebody that has fewer qualifications. But in the real world in which we inhabit, in which we're aware that there really is what essentially kind of boils down to this sort of class warfare, as we've seen exemplified by McCarthyist, that intentions matter. and that intentions can trump credentials, and that sometimes being less credentialed is better if you have ill intentions than having somebody who's very competent and knows what they're doing, who wishes to conduct malfeasance and sabotage against their own nation. And so this goes back to something that Halifax had mentioned on the debate that I had with her, this idea, would you prefer somebody who's a farmer that doesn't know anything about economics to make policy, or would you prefer an economist of 20 years? And my question was, or my response, of course, was, it depends on their intentions at the end of the day, because if your intentions are both good, then you prefer the party that has more experience, more qualifications, etc. The problem is even that becomes blindsided by this consensus problem that we have. And there's a consensus problem in academia in which everybody that comes out, or a great deal of those who come out of academia, whether it's in economics or political science, tend to have this group think dynamic where they all had to say the same stuff to get good marks and everything to their paper. And everybody who wants to get peer reviewed has to share the same sort of beliefs as anybody else. And I mean, you can check out a Vosh debate if you want to see. He'll cite the most whack type of statistics and say, well, it's a peer reviewed study. It's like, okay, you had 5 communist Marxist professors all read the same stuff and circle jerk each other and sign off on it. It's peer reviewed. It must be true. It's academia. No, academia can be very problematic. And academia has, in general, a very far left, anti-American bias, anti-Western bias, an attempt to deconstruct and self-guess the West, and to lend apologetics towards her enemies, and engage in accusations of Orientalism and neocolonialism and all this kind of stuff. If you go over and try to liberate anybody, when we're talking about intentions, it really matters, but so too does the consensus and the problem that emerges there. And so, given all of that, it makes sense that in order for us to have a dynamic and strong country, we want to have people of varying perspectives in positions of power from different backgrounds. For example, consider the fact that Harry Truman only had, I believe, a high school education, and yet he was based in Nukepelt. That there isn't this sort of magical thing that, oh, you've got a degree from Yale, therefore you're going to be a better president than somebody who doesn't have any. No, it really depends what your governing style is. It depends who your relative group is. And I would argue here, and I think one of the points that I've illustrated in my initial line of questioning, which is that what really matters here when we're talking about elitism is, who is your relative group? Because if you say, oh, I'm an elitist and my relative group is the whole nation and I want to make us all better off and everything, that's one thing. That can still be problematic. But it's another if your relative group is this small, tiny circle of elite families and you want to screw over everybody else, as McCarthyist has retweeted many times expressing those sentiments. And yeah, you can say it's all just an edgy troll, except that we know that Halifax came on here for 2.5 hours, and almost broke down at some points, almost in tears, to defend it, and felt very frustrated to try to
wrong, no source.
To try to
no, he is currently giving his argument. Please do not talk while he is giving his argument, Mr. MMI. Thank you.
Yeah. So essentially,
this is exactly why I wanted to have the muting power. I wanted to do it on my channel.
Yeah, all debates happen on this channel, but we get a neutral moderator we both agree to. So that's how this works. Now, to get back to what I was saying, so she basically got very frustrated and everything, and was almost at a loss for words in her frustration at trying to get across her defense of McCarthyist account and his views. If it's all just a troll and just an edgy troll just to make people mad, turns out that's probably not very true, because she, of course, made the arguments that, well, you know what? Yeah, you don't understand. She didn't even argue he was a troll. She argued that account, that McCarthyist account on Twitter, exists for him to vent and rant, and when he has emotions that get very high. Well, it turns out when your emotions get very high and everything, you want to rant, we're all people, the truth tends to come out. And so when we're talking about the relative group, it's very clear that the relative group is this perception of what the elites are And the group that's in opposition to that is seen as the base of the economy. In other words, the people that put food on your table, the people that put the lights on, that generate the electricity for that, the dirty coal miners, if you will, to go back to one of those tweets from Cronus that McCarthyist had actually retweeted, or actually tweeted out but gave credit to Cronus. This is the sort of thing that we can't have people in power if they wish to undermine our countries from within and to screw over the base of our economy. And it raises the question, who or whom is your relative group? Because if your relative group is a few woke corporations like Nike and Goldman Sachs and a few thousand families, and you're willing to sell out the base of the economy for them, do you really have the national interest at hand, or do you have Nike share prices at hand? Because those things are not mutually exclusive. Corporations and the national security apparatus can benefit at the same time. They can also undermine one another. And it is such the case that in the last 30 years, and I know McCarthyists will say we shouldn't have done free trade with China because relative gains, but the reality is the bulk of the outsourcing did go to China. So when you defend these policies, you can't separate them from the historical reality. That's like Vosh saying, oh no, you can't accuse me of like being like Stalin and stuff because like I'm a socialist, but I'm not that kind of socialist. I'm independent of history. It's like, no. Likewise here, the actual policies that McCarthyist advocates gutted the American manufacturing, were a boon to communist China, and now they have a vast manufacturing base that they can put to wartime, and now they have enriched their own navy, bolstered their own navy. In contrast, America's military has grown slightly, but at a much lower rate. America's, by and large, economic base has been gutted and reduced to service sector or lesser. It's really embarrassing, and it raises the question: was this done in the national interest, or was it done in the interest of Goldman and Melvin and Nike and whatnot? Again, bear in mind, we're in a pandemic and everything. We're in a case of extreme economic volatility, and here we have McCarthyist on Twitter advocating that the Redditors that short squeeze the hedge funds over the GameStop stocks, that they should be punished, and that the hedge funds should be bailed out. So it raises the question: who is his relative group? Whom is his relative group? And what's his concern? Well, it turns out it's a very small group of elites that he essentially wants to use the nation as the conduit through which he can enrich this small group of elites, of whom he basically either is a part or wants to be a part, I would imagine. And that's a big problem. And before we get into any of this sort of notion of meritocracy, understand that a meritocratic system is completely antithetical to elitism. The American dream is antithetical to elitism, and doesn't mean that there isn't success, that there aren't people that rise to the top. But again, it's based on results as opposed to my degrees or my prestige or my legacy students, that kind of thing. It's a big problem. It gets to be a big problem. And I think that it's the intention and the relative group that really matters here. And I think that I can make the case to you, and I have been making the case to you here tonight, as well as at my work on social media and on YouTube, that my relative group is the West, and it is our interest. It is the United States, it's Canada, and it's our people, and it's our nations. Whereas it's very clear in all of this that the relative group for McCarthyist is a few woke corporations that want to sell us out to the communist Chinese, and a few thousand, tens of thousands of families or so that are in that sort of elite sort of cluster. And that's basically it. And at that point, you're not a champion of the nation. You're actually undermining the nation at that point. And I think that it's very clear here that a protectionistic foreign policy or economic policy augments and actually bolsters a hawkish foreign policy, as opposed to gutting our manufacturing base to benefit our enemies or to undermine demand for our own products. That in the long run has made us incredibly vulnerable. And I think that this pandemic, the Red Death, as I call it, essentially, it is greatly demonstrated and vindicated my point that we have become vulnerable. And globalization, in that sense, this economic neoliberal sense, is actually very problematic. And the thing is, it's new. It's something that if you actually did believe in the West and America specifically and promoting our interests abroad and everything, you would not be for getting economically interdependent on these other countries that are unreliable, such as the European Union, or especially even hostile like communist China. And so to get back to what I was saying, when we're talking about elitism versus the American dream, again, how would you even have people go over and fight? How would you even have people go over and risk their lives if it was just in the service of some aristocracy? Because we live in an information age now. That doesn't work anymore. Maybe in the 1600s you could get away with that. But now, very, very hard to do. Very hard to do. And I think that beyond just state interest and just, oh, what's the difference between America and Russia? They're two countries. They both have land. They both have people. They both have state interest. No, America is exceptional. America is the vanguard of liberty. America is a shining beacon on the hill. And America must vanquish her enemies. And it is a disservice to that agenda. It is a disservice to this cause of the neoconservative Renaissance that we would gut our own manufacturing sector and undermine our own base of our economy. And going forward, I think it is very clear, as my friend Net7 would agree, that if we want to win and we want the Hawks to actually have a renaissance, we must embrace the actual legitimate and merited grievances of those in our countries, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, that have been so screwed over by the outsourcing elites for 3-4 decades now, that we must understand that the future is protectionist. But if we want to survive, it also has to be very offensive in terms of our foreign policy persuasion. And so with that, I yield the remaining time that I have. So there we are.
Thank you, Mr. Castley. Are you sure? Because you still have 6 minutes and 55 seconds.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. Again, just to tell the audience, essentially, I didn't realize what length of time we're doing. I didn't realize the degree to which this was going to be formatted. I think I made my case altogether fairly well right there for why, at the end of the day, the relative group and the intentions matter. And if your intentions and your relative group aren't the American interest, it's a corporate interest, then you're at that point not much different than somebody like Jimmy Dore. You're essentially a fifth column. You're acting for a foreign entity, even if that happens to be a corporation, a multinational corporation. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Castley. Next, Mr. McCarthy.
Before I begin,
you two will have 20 minutes to present your argument. And again, I would like to remind Mr. Castley when he is speaking, please do not interrupt.
I'm muting it on my end. So
okay. Good. Okay.
Wait, before I start, okay.
Yes.
I would like to address to the audience that I was not aware of the format either. And so yeah, and it was up to you whether you wanted to prepare a speech or not. And Politicrat can testify to this. Do not tell me what format I had or what time I was supposed to have. Just to get that out there. Okay, so are you going to start?
Whenever you're ready. We are starting in go. Yes, now.
Okay, so you said, what is your relative group? And the irony is, I've already addressed this in my opening statement. It's social welfareism, which is maximizing societal utility on the benthamine ground. It's summation of every utility that is counted for every individual in society, not just the working class, not just corporate elites, just those. And you've raised points that are outside my opening statement, which qualifies as strawmanning, by the way, because you haven't. Because I said my viewpoints are utilitarian, and your response was, no, you're relative against corporate elites. Which, as if, first of all, at least as if one pursuing corporate welfare is in any way antithetical to utilitarianism. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And for two, using outside sources on Twitter as opposed to the opening statements that I just gave. So, anyways, let's move on with your neg case on elitism on neoliberalism. So, Kevin, you conflate neoliberalism with trading with China in all your videos, despite that no one in my group, including me, supports trading with China as it stands. At the very least, the neoliberals that I talk to. The difference, however, is that you don't understand how to actually properly defend not trading with China, while I can. So if anything, the irony is that I'm more anti-China on trade than you are. So so one thing, right, is that relative gains. First of all, let's talk about relative gains. You consider yourself a neoconservative with offensive realist characteristics, so you ought to know the terms. Well, relative gains happens when one state in a given bilateral transaction gets more trade surplus than the other. This is the standard characteristic of a zero-sum game, okay? Such as Russia-China or not Russia-China, U.S.-China relations or U.S.-Russia relations. So relative gains could impede a trade if one state could use the extra surplus in the trade relations and use that to allocate to their military and invade the other states for resources. That's why relative gains is a concern. You're afraid that they will get more surplus out of the given transaction and be able to allocate to them. So relative gains influencing trade relations, though, that's not protectionism. It's an act of economically isolating a country. That's like saying that sanctions are an act of protectionism. It's not. If anything, sanctions are the complete opposite, especially multilateral sanctions. The point of sanctions, especially if they're done on internationally or multilaterally with allies, is to economically isolate the target. North Korea is one example. It's sanctioned by the international community. The UN is a protectionist to sanction North Korea. No, it's not. It's forcing them into autarky. It's forcing them into extreme protectionism because they can't trade. And you've admitted that there is no functional difference between being completely sanctioned by everyone and willingly tariffing everyone. All you said was the only difference is that one is self-inflicted and the other is well, not self-inflicted. So again, so North Korea has to be the most functionally protectionist country in the world, on the planet, given that there's not a single country besides China and some other minor countries in South Asia that has an active trade relations with it. It's the same with Venezuela, which was slapped with sanctions and economically isolated from trading. So you're not a protectionist for calling for not trading with China. You're a hawk for doing it. It's not a protectionist to call for sanctions. It's pro-imperialism to call for sanctions because you're forcing another country into protectionism, essentially. Because the problem, and you've admitted to this, that there is no functional difference in the questioning. So, and the problem arises, however, if you believe that we should be protectionists. Protectionism at its most extreme calls for trade barriers to other countries. The irony is that protectionism is a form of self-sanction. You're essentially telling the international community to not trade with you by putting trade barriers on them. A smart strategy, though, would be to economically isolate or force countries such as China into protectionism, while the U.S. stays economically isolated, economically engaged with the rest of the world. So here's the logical inconsistency in your argument, okay? You have admitted.
Remember, we are not currently rebutting the other's argument. You are presenting your argument. Thank you.
Yes, I am. So you have admitted that that there is no consequential or functional difference between tariffing everyone.
Okay, let me. Oh wait, never mind. Okay, you keep going.
Between tariffing everyone and being sanctioned. What you've also said was, Politicrat, is there a separate rebuttal section after this?
There is a separate rebuttal section after the argumentation section.
You know what? Okay, fine. I'll move on then. So, moving on. So, going back to relative gains, so we have to ask ourselves, why does the United States stay economically engaged with the rest of the world, such as the EU, CPTPP, which is no longer a part of ASEAN? Why do you support the TPP? Why do you think? Do you support the? Well, I didn't ask you this, but it's to economically isolate China. Why do you think we did it? Did the Chinese economy improve or deteriorate under free trade capitalism by Deng Xiaoping? Okay, listen. We both agree that we want to weaken China. We both agree with that. Okay, that means that ideally speaking, we want to destroy their economies. That's what we want.
Point of order,
right?
Politicrat.
Hey,
he
please.
He asked me a question. Do I get?
Yes, yes. I was about to say, MMI. There are currently no asking questions.
Yeah, I'm not asking questions. Yeah, I'm not asking questions.
And then also similarly, Kevin, this is his time to speak.
Okay, but he asked me a question and then proceeds as if I answered yes.
Well, okay, and I also want to say, MMI, everything that you should be saying right now should be worded as a statement.
Okay, so we support the TPP to economically isolate China. And we both, well, at least by your opening statements, you have alluded to weakening other countries. And that's a good thing. If China were to go jack shit poor, that would be a good thing. And on the other hand, its economy grew under Deng Xiaoping, so it improved. And under Deng Xiaoping, they pursue free trade, and their economy improved because of foreign capital and all that. So do you want a China that is pro free trade like it is? Well, that's not a question. Oh, yeah.
Again, worded as a statement,
I do not want. Yeah, so we don't want a China that is pro free trade like it is, considering that Maoist China was an autarkic economic system. Again, with this in mind, quit bickering about trading with China as an argument against neoliberalism and an argument for protectionism. Extreme protectionism weakens a country, and that is why we put sanctions. The point of sanctions is to drive them into protectionism, but forced, except that they're not being protectionist, they're being forced into it. It's not self-inflicted. And also, it is rational to still trade with a recalcitrant trade on relative grounds as well, relative gains as well. Like, if we assume that China is willing to give $1,000 for a piece of rock, then yes, we should be trading with them. Like, that's why relative gains is an objective concept. Like, you can argue that, no, that is not the case. Well, yeah, like, I agree, it's not the case. But however, there is a case when relative gains, when we have the upper hand in the trade surplus. So that's another thing. So on elitism, my point on elitism, again, is essentially lies on the idea that academically qualified people and individuals with the most merits and credentials ought to dictate public policy. You've said otherwise. I've said in open debates. You've brought up other Twitter statements out of context. That's a logical fallacy. However, just anyways, in response to this, like before, you pretty much said, would you take a malfeasant economist with 20 years of experience over well-meaning, well-intentioned farmer who might not have the same educational background? That was your response to the meritocratic elitism argument. Okay, that is a terrible counter argument. Okay, because when you're comparing two ideologies, such as populism and elitism, you're supposed to assume ceteris paribus. Okay, here's an analogy to show you how actually ignorant that comparison is. Again,
I'm not.
If you're debating, no, listen. If you're debating whether apples are better than oranges, and there's an argument that apples are tastier than oranges, if I'm arguing that apples are better than oranges, you can't make a counter argument saying, well, what if the apple is rotten and the orange is ripe? Like, of course not. Like, that doesn't work. The orange would be better. But how would that be? Yeah, if in that case, yeah, orange would be better, but how's that a fair comparison? You change the variable that was meant to be a control variable, a quality of entities that you're comparing. Like in scientific experiments, all right, in a lab, if you're comparing two things, there's acidity of two elements, for example, you hold other variables constant, like the temperature or something, in order to compare the two things fairly. So that is a very unscientific claim that you made. Whether apples are generally more rotten than orange is a separate topic. You can argue that they are generally more rotten than oranges, but again, that's a separate point. The point that I was making was that all else equal, apples are better than oranges. In this case, the credentialed ones should be ruling, or should be dictating policy.
Minus 10 minutes.
And so even if you make the claim that educated elites are somehow less caring for the general public's welfare, that, by the way, like that's a separate topic, first of all, and it's a logical fallacy. But even if you make that claim, that in and of itself is controversial, because if anything, right, if you go to some ruralists in southern states, look, they tend to have, like, first of all, they tend to be more racist and xenophobic towards immigrants, making them less prone to support globalization and interventionism.
Okay.
Education, on the other hand, no.
Mr. Castley, please stay silent while he makes his argument. Thank you.
While education, on the other hand, and academic credentials would stamp out bigotry on the general scale. So even that, by the way, this isn't even the focus of what I'm saying. You can make the argument that just because elites aren't a part of the quote-unquote general public and they're less inclined to fight for the people, but all that does is push back on the early evidence that I gave, right? Like, at the very least, the argument that you give that educated elites are less caring for the general public that argument in and of itself is controversial. Like, I can make a point otherwise. And this isn't even considering that the debate isn't on whether elites are malfeasant, which I could easily prove they're not, but on whether they would be better fit to implement sound policy, assuming that other things are equal. So that's a logical fallacy that I've pointed out again. So going back to the whole point of oppressing the working class, I am indeed, as pointed out earlier, that I'm referring to left-wing syndicalists and trade union members that are abusing mob mentality to push for policies that, ironically, hurt them and inherently anti-utilitarian. On average, you can argue, by the way, you can argue otherwise, but on average, institutional investors, corporate executives, think tank academics, wherever they are, whoever you consider elites, are more academically and meritocratically qualified. All else equal. By the way, I'm not arguing that they are more caring for the public. I'm just saying all else equal, in general, just strictly in terms of academic and merits, they're more qualified to dictate finance and policy, as opposed to low-skilled workers. You can argue that there's some corporate executives that have simply inherited their positions, but that's a bad faith argument, because that's like saying that just because there's one dumb student who got into Harvard for donating a library means Harvard as a whole is less qualified than people who attend a community college or something, right? Yes, of course, you can argue. If you pick the dumbest kid in Harvard, okay, and pick the smartest kid somewhere else, no shit, like you're going to make, no shit, you're going to make them bad. But we're looking at the aggregate. And but by the way, that's the argument that you're using. Your argument is very anecdotal, because you're pretty much saying that, oh, there's some people that got into elites because of inherited positions and it's anti-meritocratic. Okay, no, first of all, just look at some of the managers or look at the corporate executives and see what they have, see the skills that they have compared to people who work at McDonald's. Okay. I can also defend
Mr. Castley, please let him finish.
And I can also defend why legacy preferences and endowment and donation preferences are justified. I can also do that. But those are on utilitarian grounds. By the way, that's a separate topic, but I'm willing to make that here, as opposed to meritocratic. Like, I agree, legacy preferences are inherently meritocratic. I mean, anti-meritocratic. But sometimes I still argue that merits can be circumvented in order to increase utility on societal level. And this, ironically, sort of translates into elitism, because the point is to, again, my central argument in the opening statement was that we should try to maximize societal utility. So here's an argument as to why legacy preferences or endowment preferences can be utilitarian. Because legacy preferences and endowment provides incentives for wealthy parents to donate large infrastructures to these universities. Like, again, why would a parent of a Microsoft donate anything to Harvard or Stanford or any of the Ivy Leagues if they believe that those have no influence of whether their kids will get in or not? And by the way, this is separate from bribing, by the way. Bribing is different. Bribing, I don't support. Endowment, on the other hand, is a completely different thing, because bribing has private goods benefits. It only benefits admissions officers. If you're donating a library or a lab to a university, you're benefiting the students there and the people that will be attending them. That in turn provides utility.
Mr. Castley?
That in turn provides utility for students that are already on campus. And in the long term, it is utilitarian.
Minus 5 minutes.
So you can argue. I know. So you may argue that it's unfair, but that's imbecilic. Because my argument is that efficiency and utility matters more than fairness. And again, just pointing out, mentioning Herta facts and like her arguments against me is, again, a logical fallacy. Ad hominem. Moving on. So on academics, you pretty much said your whole idea of academics being far left is that they're pro BLM, they're pro neoliberalism. Okay, there's so many things wrong with this statement.
MMI, you're framing that as a question.
Okay, it's not a question, but yeah. Realists in general, structural realists, are hated by Washington elites. You have no idea what you're talking about. Mearsheimer, by the way, for one, or Stephen Walt, they published a book called
also,
The Israel Lobby.
Please do not resort to ad hom. Please don't tell him that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Thank you.
Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt is very hated by the Washington elites because pro-restraint realists are anti-elitists. They have published books calling for offshore balancing as opposed to liberal hegemony. And you can watch any foreign policy or CFR article on offshore balancing and what they think about this. The vast majority of Washington think tanks and CFR support interventionism, and they constantly rail against realism because it's too pro-restraint and anti-liberal hegemony. And this also goes to the IR departments of most universities, with the exception of a few that are monopolized by realists. And one example of this is UChicago. Mearsheimer is the most well-known realist out there. He is one of the heads of the political department. Do you think he'll be allowing liberal interventionists in his faculty? Probably not, because he disagrees with them, and that's true. All of UChicago.
Minus 3 minutes.
A lot of
you're doing the same.
Mr. Castley, let him finish.
Questions.
And yes, I was about to say, MMI. Also, please do not. I need to remind you. Please do not frame your statements in the form of questions, not even rhetorical questions. And also, again,
okay.
So yeah. And you have 2 minutes and 36 seconds.
Okay, so they have UChicago. If you look at UChicago, they have more realists than liberal interventionists in general. And we both agree, based on your opening statements, that economics department is pro-neoliberalism. I argue that IR departments in general are liberal institutionalists. So, and public policy think tanks are generally hawkish. Blinken, by the way, worked for CFR. And that's just one example. And what you call far left bias is pro-BLM. Like, yes, college campuses are pro-BLM, but that has nothing to do with economic and foreign policy, two of which they're neoliberal and pro-liberal hegemony. So the idea that they're far left is ridiculous. And you also said he wants a system like Russia. No, I don't. Not in the United States. It may be. Here's the thing. Here's my stance on this again with the Russian system. It may work for solely developing countries, because with developing countries in general, like for example, you can go Chile or whatever it is. For the developing world that is backed by the United States, they have an incentive to bring in foreign capital, which means that they would want to empower their corporations as much as possible so that they remain competitive on the international market. So basically, they bring in foreign capital, foreign investors, and they provide utility pretty much to the people. And then after that, you can make the argument that you should break up the conglomerates, whatever. There's a separate case to be
Minus 1
made
minute.
there. Yeah. And the idea that, and also on Switzerland, you said that you support sanction on Switzerland because they trade with bad actors. Okay, Canada trades with China, 17.6 billion. So by that logic, you should be supporting sanctions on China. And they also voted against the Iraq War.
30 seconds.
And you said neutrality in the face of evil is evil. Canada is neutral in the Iraq War. I guess they're evil.
I'm against Trudeau.
My time.
Mr. Castley, please let him finish. He has 17 seconds.
And by the way, they have been trading with China before Trudeau. They have been doing this for a very long time. I yield my time.
All right. Okay. Hold on a moment. All right. So, where is it? Yeah.
Yeah, we should take an intermission.
I was about to say we are going to take a 10-minute intermission. And then after that, it'll give you guys time to pee, go get food, drink, smoke a cigarette, do whatever you do. So we will return in 10 minutes to continue with rebuttals. Then after that, the shadow panel, or not the shadow panel, the shadow jury had prepared questions for each of you. So then we'll take the time for you guys to answer the questions. And then we're going to end with 20 minutes of blood sports. And I'm just going to step away.
Okay.
So, okay. We will be right back. I'll play something. Hold on. All right. So yeah, you guys are good to go. Do your thing for the next 10 minutes.
Wait, is what you're going to play be public domain, copyright free music?
Yes.
Are you sure?
It's just the intermission thing I did on mine.
Oh, okay. Because like I need to be sure about that. I'm gonna say actually, no. You know what? Because I haven't vetted it to confirm, I'm not gonna allow that to go through. We have to be serious about the copyright stuff at this channel. So
okay, then I'll do something I 100% know is not copyright.
Okay.
Something that like somebody made entirely. So it kind of has
No,
to
no,
do
no,
with
like it has to be public domain.
Yeah,
Like,
I have public domain stuff. Don't worry.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna say I'm not gonna approve it if I haven't vetted it personally. We're not doing anything like that. It's just gonna be 10 minutes of silence. So
Okay.
at that point, this is because this isn't the debate portion. I'm just muting everybody until the end of the intermission.
Okay. So we'll do something. Just to let you know, we're till 4:11 or 4:11 my time.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So for the next bit, for the rest of the debate, we will be, hold on. So for the rest of the debate, we will be, we will move on to 5 minutes of rebuttal, starting with Mr. Castley, followed by another 5 minutes specifically for Mr. Machiavellian Imperialist, followed by a question period. Each of you will be asked 10 questions. You'll each have, or actually, each of you will be asked 5 questions, and you will have a minute to answer each. Then after that, we're going to move on to 20 minutes of open discussion, followed by closing statements. So, beginning with Mr. Castley, whenever you're ready, you can begin your rebuttal.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I would say, first off, I'd just like to announce for everybody here that essentially conflating sleeping with your sister to having your heavy manufacturing done in your own country is completely hilarious and farcical. That's what I'd like to start with. Second, this idea that somehow it's just a few bad apples or something in the elites, and that the elitist sort of aristocracy that McCarthyist would envision is somehow, oh, it's just benign, bro. It's just benign. And yeah, there might be one or two bad apples here or there, but there are one or two bad apples that might come from the rural areas or whatever. The problem with that is it ignores the consensus systems that exist in the elite structures, like such as the Ivy League, as well as economics faculties altogether, where they become blinded by their own confirmation bias and their own essentially stagnant ways of viewing the world that ultimately lend themselves to uniformly cheering on outsourcing and not taking the national security interest into account, not taking domestic welfare into account, that sort of thing. Additionally, what should be noted here is that in the case of having factories and whatnot abroad and everything like that, the problem with that is of course, is that you're spreading out your base of production. You are doing two things. You're making yourself more vulnerable. You're also, of course, gutting the standard of your own workforce and whatnot. And we can talk about, oh, well, the elites are just in charge and they mean well, and but they're the ones that are competent and they need to be educated and everything. And I've argued in the past before that having somebody who's malicious be more educated is a problem. If they know what they're doing, that's actually worse. Donald Trump in many ways bungled a lot of stuff, but at least with the areas that I disagree with him on, at least he wasn't that bright in my view. If he was extremely bright, he could have done a lot of damage. He could have definitely perpetrated Russian interests a lot more. And therefore, it would stand to reason that if you do, and in this case we have a large set of very malicious, malfeasant people in what we would think of as the elite class. Case in point, check out Melvin Capital, all these hedge funds now begging for a bailout from the government, basically because they made a bad bet and they lost. They don't believe in free market or anything. They're all just about, oh, it's just about me and screw the country and all this sort of stuff and screw our people and screw the American dream. It's all just a facade for their own prestige and enrichment. And that if we're going to say that group matters more than the country, then what's the point in even having a country at that point? I mean, that's a joke. Now, I want to get to another point though, which is that when it comes to this idea of, well, they just mean well and everything, it's very clear that in the particular case of McCarthyist himself, his intentions are to the core, and his biases are to the core, that they are wholly pitted against the working people, and it exudes a degree of disgust for the vast majority of the base of the economy, and it's very problematic. And I would also say here that you can talk about, use all these terms and everything, and you can talk about, and you can say, relative gains 100 times over and all this kind of stuff. No, the problem is what's being ignored here is that it's not just about China. I'm not arguing tariff the world or whatever, but I am arguing that there are certain sectors of the economy, such as heavy manufacturing, medicine, etc., that shouldn't be produced anywhere, even in allied territory at all, and that we need to cease trading with China.
Seconds.
We also of course need to likewise focus on promoting our own industrial growth at home, so that we can be a stronger country with the capacity to wage war better. And yes, I do support interventionism and everything abroad. I support that for the interest of America, not for the interest of Goldman Sachs and Melvin Capital. So thank you. And with that, I yield my time.
Okay, we're just on time. All right, next we will move on to 5 minutes for MMI. Let me get the timer ready. So yes, 5 minutes to.
Wait.
Where'd he go?
Wait, what just happened? Wait, what just happened?
I don't know. Let me send him a message.
I'm going to send him an invite again.
Hopefully he didn't get disconnected.
Oh, there he is. Okay, he did say earlier that his internet had an issue. Okay.
Okay. Are you starting now?
Yeah. Okay. We're afraid you just like rage quit for a second, or I was. All right.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Ready.
Go.
Set.
5 minutes.
Okay. So again, the whole point. What's really ironic about this whole thing is that I'm not making my argument as much as I'm using your own arguments against you. Okay. So here are your answers to my questionnaires. Okay. You said that there's no consequential and functional difference between a country that terrors every country in the world and a country that is sanctioned by every country in the world. Besides that one is self-inflicted and the other is not self-inflicted. You've also said that you do not support free trade and outsourcing in countries such as South Korea and Japan. Your reasoning was that outsourcing those countries will leave those countries potentially occupied by aggressive states such as China and Russia, and they could take over our factories there. That was your argument, okay? And then after that, I asked, and then your other answer was, if you could sanction any country, which country would you sanction? You answered Russia. Why? Because you believe that sanctioning Russia would hurt them economically. And during the Cold War, the Soviet Union outsourced heavy manufacturing satellite states. Okay, Ukraine is one example of this, and Ukraine had their nuclear weapons too. Okay,
Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union.
Yes, and you're not supposed to ignore. You're not supposed to intervene. And Poland was a client state that they had outsourced as well too. So another thing. So that's a contradiction. The reason is that because here's why it's a contradiction. You want to hurt Russia. We all agree with that. But by your own logic, outsourcing heavy manufacturing in their client states, such as Poland or East Germany, would be bad for them because they could potentially be occupied by an aggressive state. You said we can't occupy South Korea and Japan, or we can't outsource to them because they can be occupied by China. The same way, however, Poland and East Germany could have been occupied by the United States during the Cold War. So if anything, they shouldn't have outsourced to Poland and East Germany by your own logic because they could be occupied by us. So if anything, if you want to sanction Russia, you're helping them. You want to help them because by your own logic, outsourcing heavy manufacturing is bad for them. So that's a contradiction, which you obviously can't take note of. And another thing. So many things. Okay, first of all, you said I conflated sleeping with your sister and heavy manufacturing in a country. No, never happened. All I did was ask you a question about incest. The reason I actually asked you was that you were going to, I expected that you would bring up a point about eugenics. Because technically speaking, what eugenics means is stamping out, or what eugenics means is getting rid of, here, let me pull up a definition of eugenics again. Eugenics is defined as the practice of advocacy of improving human species by selectively mating people with specific desirable hereditary trait, and it aims to reduce human suffering by breeding out diseases. So if you are against incest, then yes, you technically be saying you want to minimize these hereditary diseases. Now, and by the way, I'm not a racist eugenics either. I don't think it should be based on race, and that's another thing. And you also said that consensus in academia is bounded by confirmation bias and stagnant ways of viewing the world, such as cheering on outsourcing and welfare. Okay, that's what you said. Okay, you never proved that outsourcing is bad. Besides saying that it gets people laid off, you just make canned statements. I, on the other hand, have said outsourcing minimizes marginal cost, and in doing so, it produces social welfare because it maximizes both producer and consumer surplus. And you can also do this by pursuing deregulation. Yes, I know. Deregulation in the economy. And if you tax the newfound surplus in a way that minimizes that weight loss, it's actually better for utilitarian reasons. And it's actually better for the working class. And while some may have been unemployed, that's literally the same thing as saying minimum wage is good, because even though it gets people unemployed, that's literally the same logic you made. And again, you said I'm gutting my own workforce. if you get rid of the regulations that I mentioned about the unions, actually it would probably cancel out the outsourcing effect of it. And also, this is another thing. You said having more malicious people in charge is bad. Okay, when did I say that? You fell for the same trap I laid out. I point out in my argument in this section that you can't make a point against elites being more malfeasant than average people. The same analogy with apple rotten, ripe orange. Orange can be ripe analogy. Just because apples are better than oranges doesn't mean it's more rotten.
And time. Okay. Okay, wow. Everybody. Hold on one moment. So, next. There we go. There we go. So next we're going to move on. We're going to be moving on to the question stage. So the people on the shadow jury have prepared questions for each of you. We are going to go over that. You will each have a minute to respond to all the questions that are being asked. Do I make myself clear?
Yeah, 1 minute for each question. Okay.
All right. Okay. So, first question is, hold on, I sent them.
People are asking, what's the shadow jury?
I literally said at the very beginning, shadow jury. They're the ones who make the final verdict. They are 5 people. I'll just say the shadow jury consists of 5 people hand selected by me. None of them have ever interacted with either of you on the Political Pigpen before, or in my server or in my Discord server. None of them are hawks, so they're judging based solely upon your guys' respective argumentation, like the arguments you guys are making. So there should be little to no ideological bias in that regard. And the way we're going to do this is, since there's 5 of them, 3/5. It's like 3/5 is winner. Like at least 3/5. The person who gets at least 3/5 of the votes wins. So, yeah. Okay. So first question for Machiavellian Imperialist: do you believe that it is impossible for someone who doesn't have the appropriate credentials to provide relevant and pertinent data and discussion on topics that they do not have any credentials on?
Could you repeat the question again?
Do you believe that it is impossible for someone who doesn't have the appropriate credentials for them to provide relevant and pertinent data for discussion on topics that they don't have credentials on, regardless of how much they know about the topic? Basically, if they're a specialist, like let's say somebody's not a specialist in a particular field, yet they have a lot of knowledge on that subject, does their opinion matter?
I mean, okay, so if you're a specialist, if you're so basically, if you're a specialist but no merit, right? No academic record, right? Basically.
Well, specialist implies that you have academic credentials, but but more or less, okay. So somebody who's knowledgeable on a subject but has no has no background educationally speaking on the subject.
Okay. So here's my opinion. Okay. Like there are many cases when people without actual background and education who are successful. But I agree that it's sometimes harder for them to get in power in the elites. But a lot of the reason is that education is essentially a signal. Like in game theory, we talk about signals, right? Signals is basically where because again, education is a costly signal. You pretty much, if you attend college and do well, it shows you that you did well. But while people who are bad at it can't actually succeed, or if they're actually bad. But there are people, again, who may have other knowledge that they've demonstrated outside of their academic ability to show that they're actually better than those people. And Steve Jobs is one of those examples, okay? Or say, I believe Elon Musk is another one. Not too sure. But like they're not indefinitely barred from making public policy or finance decisions or entrepreneurial influence either.
And time.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question from Mr. Castley. What do you see as the greatest threat to the working class in modern society?
Well, the greatest threat to the working class in modern society right now, if we're talking specifically about the West, the greatest threat that we actually face is the outsourcing. It is the malfeasance of what we would colloquially term the elites. The group, essentially the relative group that McCarthyist is unironically defending today, like a Captain Planet villain or something. And so I would say that in so far as that is the threat that we're facing, it's very clear, therefore, that the solution probably isn't going to come from within that group. Probably not. Now, there are great elites out there, a lot of great elites. It's just the problem is the consensus of their institutions preclude them from having a more systematic approach that is in favor of the entire nation as a whole, and rather focuses on an in-group preference, with the relative group being the essentially the perpetuation and the continuance of the lavishing of the prestige upon the elites. Well, they outsource the base of the economy abroad and undermine our security. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Hold on, we'll save that one actually for after. Okay, MMI. How will elitism even work if you're going to just openly call for? Okay, this is kind of a loaded one, mind you. This is not me asking it, but how will elitism work if you're going to call for? And I know you actively you say outright that you do this, but if you openly call for oppressing the working class while also trying to rely on their votes.
I don't think they should say it. Here's the thing, right? I'm not here to get elected. That's the thing. And the point is that a lot of them wouldn't say it either. Like and another thing, right, is that institutions such as like the IMF or whatever bureaucratic branches they're a lot of the time they're appointed, not necessarily elected. And people that are like technocrats in particular tend to be appointed by candidates that are elected, that are funded by the defense industry or other corporations who think that their interests will be secured by their candidacy. However, there are bad lobbying. I do see that. But yeah, if I were to say out loud and actually advocate for elitism on a personal level, I'm not going to say quote unquote oppress the working class, even though when I actually did tweet it on this account, what I meant was unions in specifically, not necessarily all of the working class. You can't have an ideology where you. Okay.
All right. So moving on to the next one. It's going to be from Mr. Castley. Hold on. The person is currently sending it.
Yeah, MMI just proved my point, by the way. He is the face of the neoliberal establishment taking the mask off. He just says the quiet part out loud.
I thought you said I'm not the elite.
You're wannabe elite. You're wannabe elite.
But I thought you said I'm not an elite. What happened to that?
You're a want to be elite. You say what they want. That
doesn't mean I am one.
No. But you say what they think.
Okay, we're going to save this part. We're saving this part for the open discussion. Next question from another one for Mr. Castley. Could you please address MMI's response regarding the farmer versus the economist? And MMI, this is not something that you're going to end up rebutting. This is just a question for Mr. Castley so he can clarify what he meant by this. But anyway, the response, or MMI, could you please address MMI's response regarding the farmers versus the economists? When you made that anecdote, he agrees an evil economist would be worse than a farmer regarding policy. How would you take a qualified person over a layman with all else being equal? And does your answer invalidate your more populist position, quote unquote? I know you don't consider yourself a populist, but with regards to your pro-working class sentiment, for the lack of a better term, that's what we're using here.
Okay, that's pretty convoluted. So first off, yeah, I'm anti-populist, anti-elitist. They both lavish prestige and personality cult on a select group of people or person in their hierarchy. Second, to actually answer that, so the analogy that McCarthyist used that you're referring to, can you just 100% repeat it exactly right now so that I can rebut it exactly?
Well, exactly as it was sent to me, how he was asking. Hold on. Could you please address MMI's response regarding the farmer versus the economist? It was the the anecdote he gave over the farmer who knows a lot about economics versus the evil economist, I believe. But he agrees that an evil economist would be worse than a farmer regarding policy. But would you take a qualified person? Would you specifically take a qualified person over a layman, all else being equal? And do you think that invalidates your other positions regarding the working class being able to have more of a say in politics?
No. So on that, all else being equal in almost all circumstances, yes. However, that all else being equals is a huge assumption because I pretty much demonstrated that. No, I mean, even McCarthyist admitted, yeah, they're not going to say the quiet part out loud. The elites aren't going to say what I say out loud. In other words, they're smarter. Now, as far as under what conditions, well, if they both have great intentions and they both oppose outsourcing and everything, then yeah, you prefer the person that's more qualified in that position. But again, if it is the case that they're just like a legacy student, all this kind of stuff, and they're kind of lazy and everything else, they might have the credentials, but they might have a huge entitlement complex, and they might just be lazy. They might not be malfeasant, in which case you might have a very hardworking farmer that knows a lot about their industry and everything that still might perform better there. But again, assuming ceteris paribus, including the intentions, then in almost all cases, you would still probably pick the person that was more qualified, in the exception of if they were like basically just like fifth generation old money elites or whatever. You might want to get some new blood in there for a different perspective. So
okay, with time anyway, so that works. All right. So next question is, hold on. All right. So MMI. So you consider yourself an elitist. This is a really interesting one, but it's interesting. So if the United States were to be sort of an aristocratic or sort of a monarchical system in regards to just like its form of government, number one, if that were more efficient, would you support that? On utilitarian grounds, and if so, how would you want that structured? I'll give you 2 minutes for this one.
Okay, so in general, like I will say that. Wait, did you say 2 minutes or 1 minute?
Actually, no, 1 minute. Yeah, that's actually me not being fair. 1 minute.
Wait, actually, can you do 2 minutes because I'm answering two questions at the same time, pretty much.
Wait.
Okay, then I'll give Castley 2 minutes for the next one as well.
Okay.
Because it's by the same person and it's also kind of a weird one.
Okay, right. 2 questions. Okay, so that has 2 questions in it. Okay, so I'll first of all qualify my points. Okay, so first of all, I don't think that a monarchy will be elitist in general, like because like my idea of elitism sort of contradicts the idea that it's because it's not meritocratic, it's hereditary. That's one thing. And so so the assumption is that they're efficient, right? That's a very important assumption. If they're efficient and if the people are good, then yes, I will support it, even though I don't think like that's likely under a monarchy. Okay, like if it is efficient, if the people are genuinely happy about it, and if they're economically better, objectively speaking, in terms of GDP or whatever economic metric there, even the income inequality, then there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing bad because if the people would support it, they would be happy under that system. So, and about how I would structure that, I'm probably thinking about the if I were to go with monarchy / elitism route, I'll probably go with the something similar that the Roman Empire had, like because they had like Marcus Aurelius and the 5 great emperors that they had, where they would adopt children
5 good
and
emperors, but it doesn't matter.
they would adopt children that are qualified and to rule. However, there's if that were to be the case, there should also be checks and balance to an extent, to where they don't actually appoint their children as their successor, as it did happen, and the empire ended up collapsing. Yep.
Okay, so here's another question. So hold on, where is it?
You heard it here, folks. There's no elites in the monarchy, man.
So this also refers to, so going back to this is a really weird one, but I mean it's I guess it can kind of be related to it from like a working class perspective. I'm trying to figure out the best way to word it. I'll just ask you how it was asked.
Yeah.
Do you admire the economics of medieval Europe, where the peasants work 27 hours or less?
Do I admire the economics of feudalism is basically what's being asked of me, right? No. Like, just simply no. How is that a 2-minute? That's not even fair, because the answer that McCarthyist was able to give.
No, I gave him 1 minute. I decided I was going to give 1 minute. I'm just asking what was asked, but the next one, but what I'll do.
I don't even understand the questioning.
Frankly, neither do I. But, okay, so I'll ask you the next question, then I'll give you that extra one then, instead of moving on to her. So,
yeah.
Okay. Instead of moving on to him, sorry, MMI, you're a dude. All right. Okay. So this one's going to be for both of you, but we're going to be starting with Kevin. Are some people better than other people? Do you think some people are better than other people? Be more specific than just a yes. So in the person in the questioner's opinion, in the jurist's opinion, is that yes, any question or the question that is farther from a simple yes measures how latently populist and anti-elitist you will be. That is that's how we're measuring.
Wait, can you repeat that? I didn't even understand that. That was so convoluted. Like, yeah. I'm just trying to follow here. Like, who the hell is asking these questions? Like, who writes that?
It was one of the jurors, but okay. So the basic question is: are some people inherently better than other people? You can answer however you want. Actually, no, I don't think I'm supposed to say that part. Never mind. Just okay. Yeah, are some people better than other people, and why or why not?
Okay. Yeah, some people are better than other people. For example, a typical American is better than Kim Jong-un. And you might say, oh, but Kim Jong-un's got more money or whatever. Yeah, well, they don't have tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of dead bodies on their hand. Not to mention the suffering and misery of 25 million people every day. Well, he has his pleasure squad and his swag Benzes and swag palaces and everything. Bashar the Butcher. I'll tell you this, anybody in America is better than Bashar the Butcher. Even murderers in America, even serial killers in America are better than Bashar al-Assad. So, yeah, when it comes to a moral level, there's moral evil and there's moral righteousness, and some people are righteous and other people are evil. But as far as humans being humans and whatnot go, especially within our society, within our social contract that we have, under the law, everybody's equal within the United States or within Canada. So,
okay. MMI. Some elites, such as historian Stephen Kotkin and George Friedman, like populism, and the jurist believes that it would be more amendable to hold on. They really word all of them have worded their questions weirdly. Okay, some elites, such as historian Stephen Kotkin and George Friedman, like populism, and yeah, he worded that strangely. Anyway, does your advocacy for elitism counteract the notion of liberal democracy? Do things like Brexit and the election of Donald Trump mean that democracy must be eschewed for a more efficient elitist technocracy when the situation deems it necessary? So basically sort of I guess in times of crisis, appoint some kind of technocratic tyrant or something. I don't know. And if so, can you square this with a neoliberal philosophy? And when I say neoliberal in this case, I just mean Western liberal democratic. I know neoliberal specifically economic. A better way to say it would be liberal democratic. So a traditional modern liberal policy which supports democracy. How can you?
Okay, so first of all, I can't answer that within 1 minute. And second of all, do you think
try the best you can?
Do you think you can paste it on the private chat? Like paste the question on the private chat instead, and I can like read it and then there's like three questions.
People want their hype politicrats.
Well, this is not okay. MMI. I'm sorry. That's actually kind of. I feel like that's cheating a little bit because I haven't done that for any of them. Okay.
I mean, you can do that for Kevin, but
okay. There's no more questions left for Kevin. But okay. So here you go. Does your advocacy for elitism counteract the notion of liberal democracy? Do things like Brexit and the election of Donald Trump mean democracy needs to be eschewed for elitist technocracy that will be more efficient? And if so, how can you square this with a belief in liberal democracy? So it's really not as complicated of a question as, yeah.
Okay, so in general, like what we see as liberal democracies tend to be quasi-elitism in general, like the likes of which see now. Now with Trump specifically, like it's sort of a weird case because Trump has self-funded his campaign, but he's also a millionaire. However, I do think that the way it stands now, the status quo as of now, is the level of quote unquote elitism that I would be advocating for, because there would be corporate backers, and the people that they would be appointing, the people that candidates are appointing would be technocrats and those that are academically credentialed. And now, bear in mind, yes, I would support a liberal democracy. I am a proponent of liberal democracies in the developed world. And when it comes to Trump, it was a shame, but he also had elitist policies in some aspects, even though I'm not a Trump supporter. But yeah.
Okay. And MMI, there's one final question for you, and I wanted to save this one for last. And this is has to do with a foreign policy. But in all of this, one question that has not yet been answered by you. Kevin has answered it. I mean, not specifically, but he has indicated his positions principally throughout the duration of his argument. But this is something you've never said. Why do you support American imperialism in the first place? What is in it for you? More importantly, also, what is in it for the country as a whole? What is your reasoning for this?
Okay, so I sort of answered it, but I guess it wasn't very clear. So the assumption is that we, on Superpower Broadcasting and as a debate on foreign policy, the assumption is that we should promote American interests. And the reason is, it's sort of an assumption as opposed to why it's actually good. And I can easily make the case that American imperialism or American hegemony is best for the world, because if it's not American hegemony, it would be that of China and Russia, and they have objectively worse human rights or worse welfare for the people than the United States has. So yeah, that is my answer.
Okay.
It's good on utilitarian grounds.
But Russia has the elitist system. 3,000 families control the whole economy.
Actually, so what you can do is, you guys, that could be a good place to, like a good starting point to drop off or to jump off to our next section, which is open discussion. I'm not going to moderate this at all. I'm just leaving this part up to you guys. I need to go get something to eat. But I need to go get something to eat, number one. Number two, we need to give the people what they want. They want blood.
They're here for it.
Everybody's necessarily. It would be nice if you guys can, like, we could all go home, like the most unlikely of friends. That would be nice, but I don't think that's how it works. I doubt that's going to happen. I can't see it happening right here. But either way, open discussion. We're just going to let what happens happen. Survival of the fittest. Start whenever.
Okay. So on that point,
20 minutes.
So McCarthyist, you talk about human rights. Why do you support ISIS? You literally tweeted, for example, that the United States should support ISIS in Syria against Assad. Do you deny that? Do you take that back, or do you stand by that?
I think that we should prioritize Bashar al-Assad. And if we do take out Bashar al-Assad, then yes, I support getting rid of ISIS.
Wait, but why not work with somebody like the Free Syrian Army or something? Why?
They're not mutually exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. Yes, obviously I support funding the FSA more than ISIS. FSA is the most benevolent actor in that region. But saying that we should ignore or like prioritize ISIS is not an argument that we should abandon the FSA. They're not mutually exclusive.
Okay, but why would you don't understand that adding ISIS would be a net negative, that it would be a net liability, even just on the optics of it.
So here's the thing, right? Like, yes, by the way, I don't support funding ISIS, but here's the thing, right? If ISIS does attack the SDF or the FSA, then yes, we should attack them back. But I'm saying that when it comes to offensive warfare, we should focus on territories that Assad occupies, because ISIS, as opposed to ISIS territories. And the reason being that ISIS targets a lot of actors and are a threat to everybody. And Russia has an incentive to target ISIS if it also targets Assad. And on that note, and by the way, it's a lot like the collective action problem that you see like in modern economics, right? Because the international system is anarchic, right? And the only way to provide public good or public security is through a government, a world government. The same is it's like the military, right? We have the military as a public good because it's indiscriminate in its provision of welfare for the people. Like you can't. So that's one thing. So, and in a sense, climate is a lot like that. Like, okay, I know you make the point that climate change is actually good for Russia, but assuming that it's not, right? Assuming that climate change actually destroys everyone, it's essentially a public good / collective action problem. But the problem is that no state, because the international system is anarchic, there's no world government to like enforce other states to abide by this. Like Paris Climate Accord is very weak when it comes to enforcing this climate thing. And
good. It should be done away with, right?
Like it's the same thing with like terrorism, and I'm thinking of other cases or the coronavirus, right? Actually, not the coronavirus.
Okay, but dude, you're talking about working with ISIS. Like, here's the problem. You can use a lot of analogies to make it sound better, but you can't understand. Here's what a huge problem for you is that you don't take into account optics at all. I've literally done videos on like, it's just about my optics, but like, optics does come into play.
I have a question for you then, Kevin. You said that, you also support working with Pinochet and like other human rights abusing allies. So
yeah, like, but Pinochet is better than ISIS. Pinochet is not even close.
That's like the continuum argument, right? Like you support in principle working with state actors.
When did Pinochet attack America? ISIS literally attacks America, dude.
It also attacks Russia. That's the thing. And it also attacks like other states.
Dude, we have to have better standards.
He threw communists out of helicopters. That sounds cool.
No. Pinochet never attacked the United States. ISIS, they attacked Russia. They also attack America and their allies.
Like, here's the thing. Like, if they attack us directly, then yes, we should retaliate. And in a lot of cases, they did. Then yes, we should attack them back. It's sort of the same case with like Turkey invading Cyprus or Greece. Like, yes, if Turkey, even though they're an ally, if they attack another ally, then that would be a case for an intervention against them.
Well, they're already in Cyprus. They're already there.
But if they are doing something else, like, for example, taking the Caucasus, why should we bat an eye? If ISIS is taking over Assad's territory, should we prevent them from doing it?
But like, you said specifically work with ISIS.
I think a better wording for that is like ignoring.
You said the U.S. should have worked with ISIS to take out Bashar al-Assad in Syria. That's the actual phrase that you used.
Again, a better phrasing would be ignoring them, or if
Okay,
they
but that's a completely.
attack us.
Yeah, but that's a retraction of your statement. So that's a win for me. You retract your initial statement that the U.S. should support ISIS and work with them.
You can interpret it however you like, by the way.
Okay, we're interpreting it as a W for Kevin Castley. Let's move on. So,
okay.
The next question that I have here is, you talk about how you're anti-Second Amendment. What is it that even then that appeals to you about America if you want to just rip up everything that makes America great? Like the Second Amendment and free speech. You're against free speech. You don't believe in the First Amendment either.
Dude, you also support Sedition and Espionage Act. You're not different.
That's not a violation of the First Amendment, though. You said specifically you want to remove the First Amendment for all communists. I just want to get tough on those that are foreign agents, basically, and investigate
you're
foreign
literally
agents.
just like making your position look more moderate. Like, okay, fine. Like, if I elaborate on my quote unquote anti-free speech comment, then yeah, like by that I really mean that a lot of dangerous rhetoric espoused by Russian-funded organizations should be silenced. And you agree with that. But by the way, that's the extent in which I'm anti-free speech. I put a parenthesis on communists for a reason. Or
what about the fascists that they fund? They fund the alt-right.
Russia-backed. I could put Russia-backed as a parenthesis, whatever it is. We have the same qualifications when it comes to limiting it. That's the
okay,
thing.
but would you go after? Because the problem with the way that you phrased it is that you would go after like average people that just happen to like say some communist stuff, as opposed to the people that are getting paid by the Kremlin or the people that are actually like. I don't want to.
Like, also, the irony is you called yourself a McCarthyist too. Like, you simped for McCarthy, made memes about him, and said that, oh, I think he was based for accusing so many people of being communist. And by the way, like, technically speaking, yes, that is an infringement of freedom of speech. And by the way, that is the extent in which I support and in an agreement with you. And it's really weird how you don't see that. Like, I don't. And by the way, I'm assuming that you sort of support the blacklist that FBI gave with like suspected communists. Do you support that, by the way? Like,
I support a security state that investigate potential terrorists and enemy agents. I'm not for just arbitrarily rounding up people that we define as like being too communist or whatever. I want to have, when I talk about McCarthyism, I want to have an investigation to see who's getting paid by the Kremlin. Let's see where Jimmy Dore's getting his money from. Let's see where these people are getting their money from, for example.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Okay. So then let's just move on to the next one, which this one's like everybody asked for this. Everybody's been wanting this. So you said, for example, that you're for eugenics and you call yourself pro quote unquote choice, which is funny. Like the only people that use that term are pro-lifers. But you at least Hedefax said that, well, I believe if I recall correctly, she said that you said that you are opposed to people under having an IQ of less than 60 being allowed to procreate. She also said that she doesn't believe that people below certain income thresholds should be allowed to have kids. Do you believe that the government should just ban huge swaths of the population from being allowed to procreate?
Okay, so here's my question to you. How do you define eugenics, especially? Like, define eugenics.
Well, you can use your cute little wording or whatever. My question to you is, do you think people under the IQ of 60 should just be disallowed from having kids? And do you think people that make under a certain income threshold should not be allowed to
Here's the fallacy on your part. Okay, you made videos on her saying that she supports banning low-income people. By the way, I have a clip of her saying the otherwise in that exact same video, which I can say she's not for banning them. She simply thinks that those people should make the sound decisions of not producing them. There's a difference between saying and advising a certain group of people to not reproduce and saying that those should be banned. Those are two different things. One is a government policy, and the other is, oh, do you want me to play the clip for you? Do you want me to play the clip? Do you want me to play the clip of her saying it? Do you want me to play the clip?
Henry literally asked her. Henry literally asked her And she said, well, no. And then she goes on because she realizes that it sounds bad, right?
Listen to this. Listen to this. The 30-second clip. Okay.
Fine. Play it.
Okay.
We can't hear anything.
Hold on a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
wait, you muted yourself.
this is from your video, by the way. I'm playing it right now.
No. I know, but we can't hear it. You muted yourself.
Okay. Am I still muted?
No, you muted yourself. We can hear you now.
I'm playing it right now. Listen.
Okay.
Okay.
No name. I agree. Shouldn't ban people because, well, this country is known for having freedom. So I don't think banning people from doing things, not only would it be impossible to prevent people from having kids, but it's just not a good idea because it's just not a good idea in general to just.
So what was that again?
Yeah. You're playing a selected clip after she realized that her initial response. Her initial goddamn response
saying that she wants to ban people with lower income. I literally have a clip of your own video. I can play it in Twitter and show it to you.
Her initial response was, well, no, and then she goes on with this.
It's literally right there on the video. Right there. I just played it to you.
Dude, you missed her initial response when the truth came out, bro. Bruh, how do you even exist?
Out of context. Out of context. No, what you said was out of context. What you were saying was that those people should not willingly, on the basis of advisory, should not have kids. Not on the basis that they should be banned. On your thumbnail, you said they should be that she said that they should be banned. When I literally have a clip of her saying, no, they should not be banned. You're a liar and a slanderer. It's so obvious. I just proved to you.
She literally
out of context.
Yeah, you play a cute clip of her 10-20 seconds on from her initial statement of it saying, well, no, and then Henry's like, wait, what? And then she realizes that she said something very bad, and then she goes in to play the statement that you played.
So now your argument is she retracted it. Okay.
Yeah, because she realized that it sounded bad. Here's the problem with both of you is that you guys are straight up, you guys are just simply mask off of what the neoliberal elite actually fucking feel. So I got another question for you then, which is that you fucking argued earlier, McCarthyist, that this wasn't about actually hating the working people. It was simply about going after unions. That's what you meant by oppress the working class. Is that a fairly correct assessment that you don't actually want to you don't actually hold any sort of ill feelings towards retail workers or gas station workers, right?
No.
Okay. So then how do you explain this shit? Because this shit was literally sent to me, for example, low skill working class trash. When you say worthless retailer like Kevin Castley is the reason I call myself a social Darwinist. Holy fuck, it fucking sucks that there is no political party dedicated to hating on the working class, unlike in South Korea. Now, this was sent to me from a Discord. That's how you feel when you think people aren't watching you. This shit gets around. People talk about this. Here's the problem with that. That undermines your entire argument that you just mean well. It's all about welfare and utilitarianism. No, dude, let's keep it real. You want to lord over and oppress the economic base of America. You should never be allowed anywhere near power. Let's be real.
Okay.
How do you respond to this bullshit?
Here's the thing.
Fucking enemy of the people.
You're using the ad hominem fallacy again. And there's a difference between me saying it, okay, and other people in power having credentials and normative statements saying that they should dictate foreign policy or public policy. Okay, just because I am saying it means that they will also do it or that they would oppress it. They would oppress the working class. Does that mean the same thing? You yourself said, I'm not the working class. What happened to that? Or I'm not the elite. What happened to that?
You're a wannabe elite that's just saying the shit that you think that the elites actually...
I am the representative of elites. If you think that I'm not one of them.
No, you want to be one of them. Why is that? How can you want to be elite and be this dumb?
I don't need to be. I want to be an elite. All right. You think, here's the thing. You're assuming as if I am a spokesperson of them when I am a quote unquote wannabe in your own terms. When you said that I'm not one of them. So
you say here, Kevin proves my point that the working class deserves to be looked down upon every day. This piece of shit has the nerves to say I'm a busy hawk. They have to work around my schedule. Oh yeah, so working people, their schedules are irrelevant. The problem that you have, McCarthyist, is that a lot of this shit is out there. I didn't screenshot this. This was already available. And the problem is every argument that you've made tonight that you're just this benign elitist entity that's paternalistic and everything. No, it turns out you're actually malicious. This goes right to my point. When you said earlier, when you were asked essentially, well, how do you square all of your rhetoric and all of this with liberal democracy? And you said, well, I don't think the elite should actually say this stuff. I just say that because I'm a person and I'm just here to basically say how I really feel. The problem with that is you're admitting that I'm right because my argument is that you're the face of the neoliberal establishment taking the mask off.
I'm the face of them if I am not a part of them, Kevin.
No, but you don't get it. You're a bootlicker for them. You want to be them. You'll never be them. That's why it's sad and funny. That's why we laugh on you. That's why we dunk on you.
Okay, let me ask. If a Russian says, like, I want to be an American, and then says terrible things like, I believe that like all dogs should be killed in a debate or in like the entire world, all dogs should be killed. Okay. How does that make him the face of America? Okay. If a Russian person is saying it and he wants to be an American, does he?
But here's the problem. You defend all of their actions. It's obvious that the reason why you support outsourcing, the reason why is because it comes from a deep-seated contempt for people like me.
You're not answering my question. Okay. Is the Russian person who wants to be an American, is he the face of America in that analogy? Yes or no?
If he supports all the actions that America does and defends them and gives the reasons for why they're doing them, then yeah, the media might say, oh, he's like Joe Russian or whatever. He represents America, an immigrant, this kind of thing.
Yes, right. Okay, this Russian person represents America, even though he's not an American, just because of his opinions.
No, because it depends if he's actually parroting the message and the agenda of, say, the United States. In this case, you are parroting the message and the policies of the neoliberal establishment, and you do it with malicious intent. But then you say, I can't infer from that the establishment has malicious intent. Dude, again, you're the guy who posts shit like this. Now you can say, oh, he's cool with it. He's cool with it. Here's the problem. That goes to a broader view that you have for black people at large. Even if one black person says it's okay, that doesn't make this kind of shit that's implying right there that all black people are lesser.
You want me to call vocal? By the way, Politicrat was saying the N-word too. Like,
yeah, I know, and that's one of the reasons why we weren't able to get into it either, because the Politicrat right here is fucking biased and has a conflict of interest because he also said the N-word in that conversation.
Oh, biased, okay.
He also said the N-word in that conversation. That's why he wanted to move on, because he was implicated in it.
You're not even me on content or the policy that I advocate for. All you've been doing is
because the intent matters. That's my point, is that it doesn't matter your qualifications. What matters is your fucking intent, and you're an enemy of the people.
You're so garbage, okay? Like, look, if you want to bring up personal or like ad hominem pieces of sources, like, okay, here's the thing. Do you think I don't know about the drama between Spooky Nukies and Mr. Bapiton and you backing him despite all that? But does that make you a pedophile?
No, I mean I can
Oh,
make
you're
that.
talking about the allegations that Reese was into some underage kid. Those are bullshit accusations by a freaking tanky. That's like Pierre Trudank stuff. You're gonna go with Pierre Trudank?
It's literally a full-on document. All right, a video of it. A video.
You're gonna go with Pierre Trudank, dude. Why is there a communist flag of East Germany in your bedroom on the stream on Head of Facts channel for the 2 videos that you guys took down the other day, but we all saw? Why is there right there? They sent me. They're like, dude, check this out. Why is there an East German flag in the background with you and your girlfriend there? Are you a communist? Because it's been speculated that you're a communist, but that you're just on the side of Porky.
Not even my fucking house, you moron. That clip was taken at a separate place where, by the way, that is at her place, and she got those flags when she was over in East Germany, and she found it nostalgic, or she found it very fun to collect these historical flags and put them in their wall. Do you really think that's my fucking house after all the anti-communist shit I've said on Twitter? No, and you've made this.
You are a Marxist. You're a Marxist. You just root for Porky.
On her channel is my house. That is not my house, you moron. Oh my god.
Well, then there you go. There you go. So you basically say, oh, it's benign or whatever. Okay, it's just weird. I wouldn't film myself personally in front of a communist flag. That's just me. It's just me.
Yeah, no shit. Okay, I did not like that either when she did that. Like I wanted her to take down those flags.
No, but dude, you're a Marxist though. You just root for the bourgeoisie. You're like a Captain Planet villain, as one of my friends would say.
Okay,
you're like a cartoon villain. You guys are like you two are like what QAnon thinks that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are like in their personal life. Unironically, it's kind of amazing.
Oh, I mean, okay. Here's what So Politicrat said this, that I'm a Marxist who descriptively agrees with them, but normatively disagrees with them. Here's my stance on this, okay? My stance on Marxism is that whatever their descriptive analysis of capitalism is that it doesn't matter. Like their central argument is based on like this labor theory of value, and that alienation is a thing where people lose joy and they can't derive happiness from work anymore due to this mass production culture and whatnot. Here's my take, right? Even if my take is that it doesn't matter whether they're descriptively correct or not. The only thing that matters is efficiency, maximizing output, and maximizing social welfare, which is producer and consumer surplus. Like it doesn't matter whether like, and I never even called myself a Marxist on any occasion. I just
no. But you basically embrace the tenets of Marxism, though. Is the problem?
Like no, what I say was it doesn't matter whether their basic tenets are correct or not. It doesn't matter. There's a difference between saying it doesn't matter and saying yes, I agree that workers are being exploited, and I agree that alienation is a thing. Which, by the way, even if you prove that alienation is a problem. Like, how is that going to undermine capitalism? How?
Oh, man. Again, what I find kind of amazing here is just how you'll have this public persona of like, well, no, we're just trying to maximize welfare and everything and focus on the policies. Yet you're arguing that the intentions behind it are totally irrelevant without realizing, dude, in that example you gave me, you're still the rotten apple. That's the problem. You say shit like he's a dirty, worthless retailer, which again, most of the people in the United States are, truck drivers, retailers, etc. What you basically root for a system that you want to lord over these people and undermine their standard of living and undermine their security in the interest of woke companies, not in the interest. Like you're basically a flagless multinational corporation bootlicker, basically. Not an American patriot.
I have asserted my positions. Just read back to the debate. All right. I'm not going to repeat myself. All right. Just read back to the statements. Read back to the rebuttals. And there's my answer. Like, there's nothing to say.
Your answer is that your hatred of the working people
just giving
is
canned
irrelevant.
statements with no evidence, no substantial
So
arguments.
Why are you trying to turn young people into Marxists and communists by making capitalism look evil and saying that capitalism is awesome because it screws over the working people? Why? You don't see how that turns people into communists?
I literally made this account, all right, in the summer for purposes of trolling and to piss off.
That's not what Head of Tech said. No, she said you come on here to rant and when you get really emotional.
Same thing, dude. It's the same thing.
No, it's not. Trolling for walls. Ranting is when you're mad and hate the dirty retailers and want to let off your steam and how much you hate the American people, basically. There's a difference, man.
Okay. The first tweet on my account was Pinochet is good, and something along the lines of defending torture and other enhanced interrogations. Okay, those are my first tweets. If I wanted to actually be pro PR, which you accuse me of not being and being anti-optics, okay, if I wanted to do that, would I be openly saying or tweeting things that are the most controversial aspects of neoconservatism or imperialism? Would I be doing that? No, I'll be just focusing on the good things that they did, like in Panama or Grenada or wherever, or World War II. Like being pro PR is a completely different business.
You said the N-word. You also called a black veteran a cotton-picking C-word. Here's the problem. You're trying to argue to us that doesn't belie racial animus.
How many times
McCarthyist, are you a racist? McCarthyist, are you a racist? McCarthyist, are you a racist?
All right.
McCarthyist, are you a racist?
You want me to bring up him saying that it's all cool, all right?
No, but he's one person. Those remarks reflect on how you think of all black people. You wouldn't have said that to a white person. Be real, dude. We're not stupid.
Literally, it's okay. If he was saying it, all right, does that mean that he has an animosity towards his own people or himself?
Okay, you're sounding like David Duke right now, saying like, "Oh, but they get a word. Why can't we say it?" That kind of thing. That's basically
at this point, you're not even talking about the content of the debate, but rather
it is relevant whether or not you're a racist and a classist.
No, it's not. That's a fallacy.
It's totally relevant.
No,
your intentions are totally relevant. No, you can say it's an ad hom, but you're advocating for a system.
Ad hom is objectively a logical fallacy, by the way. Do you not see that?
You can invoke, you can say ad hom all you want. The question is, why would anybody listen to a racist? Why would anybody take a racist seriously? Like I'm on here. The reason why I'm debating
you're the one who doesn't support BLM. I have said on the show I support BLM. So you're the one calling me the racist?
No. You support this radical deconstruction of American social and moral fabric so that you can rebuild it in your own technocratic dystopian view.
That doesn't make any sense. That literally doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
100%. You're basically far left with
I gave you guys hello. Nope. I gave you guys a little extra. Oh, I didn't put my name on.
Yeah, like BLM, by the way.
Guys. So you guys are now done. I gave you extra time. I gave you an extra 5 minutes. We are going to move away from blood sports now. We are going to move on to closing statements. Each of you guys will get 5 minutes. We will start with you, Mr. Castley.
Okay. Thank you. Well, my friends, thank you for tuning in tonight. I know that it took a long time to get to the blood sports portion. That wasn't my fault. You can blame the politicrat for that. But that's he chose to go with this one.
Well, I gave the people what they want. Are they not entertained?
No. But the people wanted it like 120 minutes before. But we got it. So all is good. We got it.
Hey, I mean, if you guys just want to do a blood sports session, I can arrange that, and I'll just like completely sit back and let you guys go at each other.
Oh, I'm open to that.
Not tonight though, but like we can follow up or something.
No, I'm skeptical that would even happen. I'm down, but I after the nuking, after the thermonuclear grilling that's just taken place tonight, I have my doubts that would even actually wind up happening. Because my friends, tonight I've exposed McCarthyist here as a racist and a classist who, despite his attempts at essentially telling us that his worldview is motivated by maximizing welfare and that it has our best interest at hand, that at the end of the day, he regards the base of our nations as worthless, and and that we need to keep them down and need to oppress them and stamp them down. And it's clear that his profile that exists on Twitter, as was defended for 2.5 hours by his significant other, who almost broke down in tears, by the way, to defend it, is not just for trolling. It's to basically take the mask off and not get into trouble for it. And so this, my friends, my viewers, and yes, some of the haters and traitors out there that are with McCarthyist and came here tonight to see him own me, you know, I don't really apologize, but I will say, you know, I can sympathize. You guys are upset right now because it was a big L on his part. It was a cavalcade of L's. But that's what happens here. Because if you try to gaslight us and you try to sell us on your BS, and then when we call you out on it, you try to say, oh, but that's an ad hom. No, we are exposing your character, and we are essentially saying here, and we are illustrating how you behave and how you actually go about conducting yourself belies any attempt at actually trying to maximize or betrays any attempt at actually just focusing on maximizing welfare. Turns out actually, yeah, black people, I guess, oh, they're just cotton pickers. And it turns out, oh, people like me, worthless retailers, low skill. By the way, I guess PewDiePie is low skill too because he's just a YouTuber, right? No, why should the American people, why should the people of the West ever want people like you or your ideology of neoliberal imperialism to ever be lording over us? It's time we took our civilization back. It's time we took our culture back. It's time we took our nations back. And it's time that we once and for all promoted our interests over the interests of fifth columns and the enemies of freedom and the American dream. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and check me out, Superpower Broadcasting. I've been Kevin Castley. Thank you.
Okay, now McCarthyist, 5 minutes, your closing remarks, and then when you're finished with the closing remarks, we will have a sort of 5 minute, we'll do another 5 minute sort of intermission, even though we're at the very end. I am going to convene with the shadow jury, and we're going to, I just to know, I don't, well, I'll say that afterwards. But yeah, okay, MMI, you have 5 minutes. You have till 5:24 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe we're in the same time zone. You can start giving them whatever.
Okay, so a lot of things, like there's not much to say besides him. By the way, not in the debate, well, in the debate and in the free exchange discussion, he has resorted to criticism of character as opposed to criticism of content. And his entire argument is reliant on a fallacy. He can call it that it's not ad hominem. No, his argument is that, no, he shouldn't be saying that. It's really that it is ad hominem, but we don't care. Because his argument is that even if because the source is bad, the argument and the content is bad, which again, you're clearly incapable of seeing how that's a fallacy. And I've pointed out multiple fallacies. Most of the time, I was relying on his own arguments against you. You have owned yourself. I've questioned so many times, and you support sanctioning Russia and preventing them from outsourcing in their client states, even though it is bad for us to do it. So there's a literal contradiction where you want to hurt Russia, but you want to prevent them from doing things that are bad for them. And more points on the malfeasant economists with 20 years of experience. Like, again, you're so deluded with, and you can't possibly have basic analogy skills down, because no, just if we're comparing just apples to oranges, you can't say, well, what if the apple is rotten or the orange is ripe? I've made this analogy multiple times. You cannot you haven't made a counter argument to that, so that argument flows through. Your only argument against that was, well, but most of the time it is. Most of the time apples are more rotten than oranges. That was your argument. But again, that's a separate topic. That's a literal separate topic that has nothing to do with the argument that you were making, the argument that I was making, and the counter argument. All right. I can make the argument, by the way, that apples are actually not commonly rotten. The same way I can actually argue here that people who have academic credentials are not necessarily malfeasant. If anything, it's the opposite. I have pointed out, which, by the way, you haven't defended. You haven't counter argued my point against legacy preferences. All you did was it hurts working class. That's not a counter argument, so that argument flows through. You haven't argued against the idea that most think tank academics, corporate executives, or whatever the people that you consider elites are, on average, on aggregate, more qualified and more meritocratically competent to run fiscal and foreign policy in general. You can argue that they, by the way, and by the way, you didn't even give a reason why these people are more malfeasant. You haven't. You just said that it's an assumption. You just said that, oh, these are malfeasant and therefore these people should not rule. Where's your argument? You don't argue. You haven't made those arguments either. And again, your whole argument is based on straw man. Like it's on pointing out old tweets that with your own interpretations on them, despite me giving my own actual intentions and interpretation of what those actually were. Look, I can make empirical evidence and arguments that you're wrong, but this debate has more so devolved into me simply questioning you and using your own answers against you. That's all that's been happening. Like, it's so clear. And it's the proportion in which you rely on the ad hominem fallacy. It's incredible. It absolutely is. So there you have it. It's up to you. All right. It's up to you whether you want to accept the results or not. But that's the reality.
Okay. On that note,
no denial of being a racist.
We are going to do a 5-minute recess. So actually, we'll get back at 6 minutes. Actually, we will get back reconvene at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to present the shadow jury's verdict. Again, everybody's shadow jury are a collection of 5 people. None of them are hawks. Just saying, none of them are hawks. Very specifically chosen. None of them have ever been on the political pig pen with either of you. One of them has not even been on it. Some of them have never even heard of you guys before. But either way, so I think I was pretty objective picking who did that. But came in with no preconceived biases whatsoever. Ideologically diverse too. So again, for the final decision, since there are 5 of them, it is going to be 3/5. Whoever has at least 3/5 of the vote for who did well here for what the resolution. Again, the resolution was that the elite, basically the elite, have more of a right. Well, not more of a right. The elite are better equipped to run society as opposed to the working class. The working class shouldn't have to say. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling right now. But either way, we will reconvene at actually let's do 5:32. So yeah, you guys go do whatever the fuck you need to do. Where's Ray? Hello? Hello? I hear you guys. We just need Ray. Hello? Yes, I can hear you hard. Where the fuck? Bring Ray in here. She's not on the call. So, okay, let's just start discussing while we're waiting for Ray. Okay. All right. You guys. Who wants to go next? Ish. Ish. Let's go. Ish. George, Damnation, and Ray. Ish. What are your thoughts? So wait. So I'm guessing. Wait. Hold on a second. So for George, you said. So are you getting it to Castley? Oh, okay. So, all right. I'm making you go right now. I'm sorry. Just get it over with.
Hello. Where is MMI? Wow. He said in the private chat, I have to leave. I'm at an office and the door is closing. I made my conclusion, so there's that. Yeah, and so did I. I think it stands for the record. That was incredible what we just witnessed. That was a thermonuclear barbecue. Unbelievable. Wow. His response to being called a racist was, but that's an ad hoc. In other words, not denying the racism, just saying it's not relevant. Wow. And then he goes back to talking about economics and stuff on Russia, as if that's even what anybody's concerned about at this point. Amazing. Lacks all self-awareness. Incredible. Wow. Wow. Well, I expect there won't be another Bloodsport session, but all we needed was one, because you had me here to do the barbecue. So, scummy thing to bring up the stuff about Reese, though. I will say that. Absolute scum. Going and getting some communist hack that harassed Reese. Unbelievable. Digging out that kind of dirt, which isn't even really dirt. It's just a smear campaign against Reese that he relied on. Amazing. Amazing. Couldn't find any dirt on me. Couldn't find any dirt on Reese apart from a commie hack thing from a few years ago. Unbelievable. Made by a group of people who literally said that they were going to send a barrel bomb to Claire Voltaire. That's what this guy relies on, a bunch of communist terrorists. Amazing. Amazing. Now, my guess is the shadow jury is probably going to go with him because they're going to say, well, Kevin ad homed. I don't care about some stupid spurgy shadow jury. I'm not, it doesn't matter. They say I win, I win. If they say I lose, I still win. I did what I set out here to do tonight. So imagine unironically being Hedefax and imagine unironically being McCarthyist tonight and tomorrow and 10 years from now and 18 years from now. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be elites. I'll say that. Yeah, we don't know where Politicrat is to Kanzik. What did he say against Nightmare Fuel? Oh, he brought up some stuff from, like, basically the PR True Dank crowd. I guess he did some dirt digging and found some communist hack pieces against Reese. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. Oh, MMI left. So he said he had to take off. He said he made my conclusion. So there's that. He called Reese a pedophile. So based on a communist hack job. So embarrassing. Wow. Is the Politicrat even here? I mean, because I'm just going to keep talking until we get back. I personally don't care about the results of the shadow jury, whether it's 5-0 in favor of him, 5-0 in favor of me, because I said what needed to be said. People wanted a racist exposed and called out, and I believe I delivered. And no, I don't have him muted. He's just not here right now. He might be getting tea or something to do the meme. If you support my work in taking down a notorious racist and classist, you can check out my Patreon, PayPal, and Ko-Fi in the links in the description below. That's all I gotta say. I mean, but hey, like, somebody had to do it. You know, there's a lot of different people groups that this guy didn't really seem to like. So, you know, but I think I made a pretty good case against that kind of ideology. So thank you for your viewership this evening. So yeah, Pest says the 30-minute blood sport was all worth it. Yeah, you guys really had to wait. And yeah, just to Henry's point, I didn't mute anybody. Didn't mute anybody during any part of the debate. Politicrat's not muted. He's just not here. And McCarthyist took off. So I'm here to entertain you in the meantime. Arthur Izar said, he says no. Oh, Politicrat says no, not yet. Well, no, I'm not going to mute you. Arthur Izar says, good job, Kevin. Thanks, Arthur. Thanks, Arthur. Arthur was talking about earlier how he was hoping that I'd be able to remove some of the bigotry that's associated with, like, the right and everything. And I mean, look, if right-wingers, center-right people, moderate conservatives want to have any sort of future, yeah, we absolutely need to dissociate and condemn any sorts of racism. I mean, if you're saying racism's the future or whatever, you're done, right? I mean, give us 4 minutes. Okay, so I will entertain the people for 4 more minutes. So I'm surprised that, yeah, I agree with Nuke. I'm surprised he didn't bring up Devin Tracy. It was actually worse. I mean, going in and getting some BS accusations against Reese from years ago, implying that Reese is a pedophile based on some commie hack job against Reese. Unbelievably grotesque, honestly. And he's going to say, oh, well, you called out my racism, basically, so I'm calling out Reese's pedophilia. It's like, yeah, except the difference is his racism is real. He admitted it, but he only said that it's not a big deal because the person that he said the racist remarks to accepted his apology. The problem that I have with that, though, is that those remarks weren't geared at one particular person. He didn't say, like, Volt's stupid or something. He said remarks that show how he feels about all black people. You know? Because he wouldn't have said that if Volt was white, right? None of us think he would have said that if Volt was white, obviously.
I'm going to clarify this when I present the verdict.
Oh, are you speaking to us now? We can barely hear you. Wait, we can barely hear you.
I'm gonna present, and I'm not going to say that it was unanimous. I'm not going to say the number of people.
Wait, we can barely hear you, dude.
Plus,
we can barely hear you.
Not even that. It's just that I just think that should be more or less aligned.
Wait, we can barely hear you.
All right. So
MMI's here. He says on my seller data, I'm not a racist, and my response is that even if the screenshots were true, hold on a second, Vold and I are good now. No. Are you gonna deny that the screenshots are true? The screenshots are true, dude. You can't back out of it now 2 hours later after you said that it was wrong.
Because I'm an elite. For instance, I'm technically an elitist. But
wait, what the hell is going on right now?
I don't fucking hate the working class. I think they're very, very fucking important. Like, I mean, I'm not a technocrat. I guess you could call me like an elitist pluralist, kind of. Yes. Yeah, just like tell.
What?
Oh, just tell him the politicrat told you that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just tell the county that the politicrat said it was fine. All right. Okay, it's 5:40. I'll call back. I'll call you guys back when we're done. Yes. Yeah, I guess that's kind of like me. I'd say pluralist, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh crap. Did people hear me?
Yeah, we've been listening into your whole conversation for like 5 minutes. It's pretty funny.
All right, I'm back. Okay.
It's pretty funny. Like I said, I don't mute. Right. I like look. That was McCarthyist whole thing. He's like, but you can mute.
Okay,
people.
I'm sorry. I was not aware.
I don't mute people. I didn't mute you. I wasn't going to mute you. We actually had some fun listening into the very unbiased proceedings. So sure.
Really? Did it come across as unbiased?
It just seems sus. I think the consensus from the audience was that it was sus, but funny. So.
Okay. What's the?
Like, I'm not an elitist, or like I'm an elitist, but like I don't really like hate the working class and stuff. That was fun.
Okay, I have a question. When you post this though, do you think you could edit that part out?
No. Well, of course not.
No.
Just the public interest.
No, I just mean that part. It's not. No, I mean I'm supposed to.
No. I can't do that, dude. I can't do that. That would make me look totally biased and hacky and everything. It's a live stream, dude.
I'm talking that would make me but that would make me look biased too. I'm sorry, I thought I wasn't mean. Okay, no, I'm just asking.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense, dude.
Never mind, whatever. It really,
this is all live though. They can see it right now. This is funny.
True. Okay, fair enough.
Bruh. I mean, this is like, bruh. Like, what's even going on, man? Bruh.
Okay, everybody. Hold on. I'm about to announce. Okay. So who do you think it was sus leaning towards?
Oh, almost certainly. Well, we couldn't tell based on that. It just sounded like like the deliberations and stuff were like, oh yeah, like don't tell the county and all this kind of stuff. It just sounded funny.
No. That was, you just heard the end of a joke. That okay. Basically one of them.
No, we heard the whole thing. It was quiet.
One of the guys asked me, does this count for jury duty? That's what I was answering. And I said, yes, just tell the county that.
No, it just sounded spooky was all. Like we're not saying that it was biased in any one direction or another. I already said while you were talking, I figured that they probably voted for MMI because they probably said that my exposing him as a racist was an ad hom, in which case I say, I'll take the L from the jury and get the dub from the people. So
yes, for the past 10 minutes, we have deliberated. And so the resolution again was the working class should not be in a place of leadership, that society should be more or less run by a technocratic elite, and the working class suck. That was the resolution, and the shadow jury votes against the resolution.
Oh, well, there we go.
So you, Mr. Castley, congratulations.
Wonderful. So there we go.
Yep. Again, the jury.
Triple dubs.
The jury. None of them were hawks. None of them have ever been on my live stream. Some of them have been on the live stream, but not with you on it. Again, ideologically diverse. I won't say how many people ruled in favor of you and how many ruled against you. Just
at least
3/5. Just know that it was at least 3/5.
That's kind of the meme, the 3/5 meme. Considering the racial stuff that came up tonight and everything.
Oh well, I didn't even.
People were making jokes about that earlier. They're like, "Oh, 3/5, like as much of a person as MMI would imply that those people should be, right?"
Anyway, yes, they rule against the resolution. So you have officially won the debate. Everybody, I'm the Politicrat. This was the very first debate I've ever moderated, so I think that's pretty obvious. I'd like to do it again sometime because I actually thought it was kind of fun. And I'm sorry if you weren't expecting it to be as structured as this. When I was asked to moderate a debate, I was thinking like an actual debate, but I think the thing is I was outside going for it's like snowing like crazy here, but I went outside anyway. I wanted to miss the blood sports on purpose, and I want to go back and listen later.
Okay, it got incredibly intense.
Oh no, the shadow jury thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Everything came out.
Yeah, they didn't take much of the blood sports into account as it relates to the final decision because I think most of them have pretty much made up their minds by the closing statements, or not by the closing statements, but by the when you guys were finished presenting or after the rebuttals and everything. But yeah, so everybody. I'm the Politicrat. I have a channel. It's posted in the show notes below per Mr. Castley's Superpower broadcast. This video, whatever. I make a variety of content focusing on history, philosophy, the philosophy of history, economics, geopolitics, and currently working on a video series with another YouTuber collaborating, specifically focusing on the historical philosophy of Sir John Bagot Glubb, who was this fucking based British general who led the Arab Legion during the 1940s. The British man, yeah. Anyway, so I'm making that video series. I appreciate it. Just go hit the subscribe button, click the bell button. I assure you that my content and the Political Pigpen, which is the weekly politics-themed live stream I assure you they are much better than my moderating skills as they currently stand. But yeah, and if anybody ever wants to come on to the Political Pigpen, just let me know. I am on Twitter. You can follow me there. Oh, and I'm also starting up a new live stream that focuses not on politics, but mostly on philosophy and history, called the Homo Sapien Agenda. That should be starting at some point in the next couple of months. Either way, yeah, I'm the Politicrat. Thank you so much for bearing with me here. I had a good time. Take care, Kevin.
Yep. Thank you for moderating. And I don't think we'll be having blood sports with MMI ever again, but I don't think we need to. It only took one. So there we are. And have a good night, everybody. I will be doing the post show. Beginning in about 10 minutes. Won't go too long tonight because it's late. I'll be doing part 2 tomorrow night to go over further results. And we'll have a lot of people there. So that was wild. I promised you it would be wild. Did I not deliver on that promise? I delivered on that promise. So see you guys in about 5 to 10 minutes. So wow, that was pretty intense. See you soon.